Welcome to another episode of Real Talk with a Vulnerable Angel and Friends. I am your host, the Vulnerable Angel, Dominica May, and I am joined tonight with my guests, Sharad and Ed. Hi,
Hello.
Hello.
And just as a little introduction, if you've never joined us for this podcast live stream before, what we do is we just have vulnerable, deep, personal conversations. I usually have some questions that I draw from different card decks, and then we just talk for a couple of hours or so. It can be anywhere as short as 2 hours to 4.5 hours was the longest one that we had. So we probably won't go that long tonight. That was a special. I don't know what happened that night, but that was a great night. Would you guys be interested in like a little intro and tell us or tell the audience who you guys are?
Ed?
Sure. I'm Ed Cable. Professionally, I'm a scientist, and I've been a scientist for about 30 years. I work in the pharma industry, kind of more biotech. I'm the guy at the beginning who says, "Oh, it'd be great to have a drug for this." And today I was chatting with I went to a couple fifth grade classes and made the comment like, most of my colleagues don't know what I do. There's no way I'm going to explain it to a bunch of kids. But when I started this, I thought we were all smart, and now I'm amazed at some of the things we can actually do. So
That's cool. And just as a side note, I met Ed at a stand-up comedy open mic night we used to go to on Thursday nights, which is his right now because that open mic night does not run anymore.
We didn't shut it down.
No, we didn't shut it down. There was the producer decided not to continue with it. That's his prerogative. He can do that. Sharad?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharad. I am a writer, producer based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Happy to be here. I used to do stand-up comedy quite a bit, which is how I met Dominica. And because the hardest thing for me as a writer, I found, was getting people to laugh. And that generally was the hardest thing. And I remember someone just said, well, if you want to, I mean, you're a funny guy. Why don't you challenge yourself in doing stand-up, see what fits? And it was the biggest high I ever got, and love it to this day. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I meet a lot of people through stand-up comedy, obviously, or through my creative pursuits. If you are joining live or if you're watching this after the fact, if you want to ask us personal questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the comment section. If you're not watching live, then we will bring it up in the next episode. So always an option for you. I think I'm going to start with this deck that we've been using. Can't believe I did that.
It's good fun.
And let's see. This is one that the questions I pull from are asking about moments when you had particular experiences. Ooh, okay. This is a good one. A moment when you were a total train wreck.
Okay. I know mine.
Go ahead.
So
Kick us off.
Jump in.
This would have been probably 5 years ago. And it was more a physical train wreck than an emotional train wreck. I've done quite a bit of things. I've crashed my mountain bike many times. This one was drug induced. So, one of the issues I have with our country is that we don't regulate the drugs based upon their toxicity. So things that are very, very non-toxic, like THC or psilocybin, are Schedule 1 compounds. I don't understand because you basically can't eat enough to kill you. Whereas alcohol, which is really freely available, makes hundreds of billions of dollars worth of damage. So my COVID hobby was to grow mushrooms, and I grew different strains of mushrooms. My wife, this is my wife's favorite drug. So I grew a whole bunch, learned how to do this.
FYI,
Can I talk about this?
criminalized in
What?
they're decriminalized in Oakland.
Yes, they're decriminalized now in California.
I just want to preface
FYI.
that, like, because I don't want to promote like illegal activities in other places.
Well, I'm not worried about
There-
illegal.
there
I'm
might-
worried about dangerous, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I took some once. I had a couple different strains, and did 1 gram, thought it was cool, and then did switch strains, and then went to 4 grams. And oh my goodness. The first part was phenomenal. And then at some point I'm laying on my kitchen floor because it's cool, and I'm looking at my cat, and the cat's got like 6 eyes out of the side of its head looking back at me. And then I'm one of the 5% of the people that the sugars in the mushroom caused me to vomit. And so I made a big mess. And at some point I'm laying in the shower, half in and half out with the shower running after I had vomited everything up. I mean, it was really just unbelievably painful physically with that. But I like the drug though. And so one of the things I learned is if I use an extract in a candy bar, I can get the psychedelic effects without the emetic sugars coming along and ruining my evening and ruining my wife's evening. She was a very good coach at that point and put up with me. So that's one time I was a train wreck, and I needed actually my spouse's help to untrain wreck the whole entire thing. But you know, she's a very forgiving person, so glad I had her around.
I want to say something, but it feels inappropriate. I'm just one potential advantage to becoming a scientist, I guess. You're like looking at some of the things that I don't know. Yeah. Wow. I've never taken any of those kinds of drugs. The worst I've tried anything was marijuana, and that was only as a result of and it was after it was legalized for across the board in California, and it was because my ex-husband really, really, really wanted me to. Like I had been against it for so long, and I would never do it again. Like I'm just like,
Really?
it didn't really do anything for me.
Okay.
But that's not my train wreck story. That's just my response to yeah, I don't do drugs. Yeah, do you have a story, Sharad, or
Yeah, so just to fill Ed in, because this is the first time we're talking. I was based in the US in Savannah, Georgia, and I was hoping to move to Los Angeles as a writer-producer. And I think it was the day after I had an interview with Marvel Film, which looked quite positive. The day after that, I actually fell ill, and I was in intensive care for 6 months.
No.
I contracted this completely random autoimmune disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Which basically, obviously, so it's your cells can't tell friend from foe, and they attack each other. So, in terms of me being a complete wreck, I was awful. Like as soon as they told me what had happened, and I couldn't process anything. And a side effect of my illness was, which I still combat to this day, is my limited stamina and short-term memory loss. So I'm like, it's almost like a movie kind of thing where every time I would fall asleep, I'd wake up and my memory would wipe. And I remember it got so bad that in the hospital, this is prior to my mum being informed, flying over from Malaysia, they actually had to restrain me because and there was a sign right in front of my bed saying, "Sharad, you're fine. You're in the hospital. Don't punch anyone." Because I got so confused every time I woke up, and I was like, "Where am I? Why don't my legs work?" And so I was a complete wreck for a long time. But it makes for a funny story. So FYI, if in the hospital, don't punch the staff. Just don't. But yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's
Go ahead.
funny because the wellness community is like, oh, strengthen your immune system. And you have a story where when your immune system's strengthened, that's not what you want.
No, not always. Yeah, it's like mine was too strong. So
Too much. Mm. I have I guess a couple of things came to mind. Ed's story reminded me of just a short thing, and it's not really train wrecky, but like by my standards, because I'm a goody two shoes that doesn't even do drugs.
Lies.
And no, serious. Rarely get drunk or anything. But back when I was, I'd recently turned 21. I was on vacation in the US, staying with my family in Salt Lake City.
Utah.
And Utah. Mm-hmm. And they took me for a big family gathering at a Red Lobster.
Oh.
And I thought, I'm 21, I can have alcohol. Woohoo! I'd been allowed to drink since I was 18 in Australia, but when I entered the country in the US, I was 20, so it was a brief period that I wasn't allowed to drink for, right? Anyway, so my family, they let me order whatever I wanted, so I combined a strawberry daiquiri with a lobster salad, I think, and those two things together were not a good combination.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up feeling very sick at the table, but not really like it was I needed to vomit so fast that I didn't have time to get to the bathroom. So I ended up vomiting into my daiquiri glass at the table. And this was going on while like the family is all around, have no idea what's going on, apart from like the two people that are sitting next to me, and they're just like taking care of me and like rubbing my back and stuff. And like everyone else is just completely oblivious to the fact that I vomited at the table into my glass.
They're like, who let the freshman in? Yeah.
So bad. I've never been in that kind of condition in front of family before or since then. But it's just like that's a horrible experience, and I have.
But at least you're in a safe space, right? And like, if anything else, that's the best place to do it because they have your back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, that's true. Like a lunch, right? Vomiting at a Red Lobster at lunch that did it very. I don't even remember how many people there were there, but there was a lot of. I have a lot of family in Salt Lake City. And then the other thought that came to mind was probably be like my worst state of depression, which was not long after I moved to the US. When I I didn't want to move here at the time because it meant leaving behind all of my really good friends in Malaysia that I'd felt like I'd just finally started to feel like I was part of the community there. And it was like my ex-husband, well, he was my husband at the time, but he ripped me out of the country and away from all of this community that I'd built. But not only that, I was we were polyamorous, and I was dating one of the guys in the community. And after like about a month and a half after I moved here, he just completely shut down and disappeared on me without an explanation, without much of an explanation. And that completely devastated me because I was like, I have zero support system now, because I was not on very good terms with my ex-husband at the time. And so it sent me into like the worst depression I've ever had. And then shortly after that was when Robin Williams passed away. And that was like one of the bigger triggers that was like, if he can't cope, then what hope do I have, kind of thing. My other big trigger was still like watching my ex on social media and seeing him post or somebody post a picture of him with a couple of girls draped like across his body and stuff, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? This is not the you that I know. And yeah, so at that point I was like, I need to get away from everything, because being on curled up in a ball on the kitchen floor and wanting to fantasize about ways that I could die was not a good place to be.
No.
But it took a long, I mean, maybe not that long by some people's standards, but it took me a while. Like I got help. I went into some intensive outpatient program with health insurance that I had at the time, and they put me on medication, and that numbed me out. I'm like, I still felt like a train wreck on medication. So like, I have no feelings now, and I'm making dark jokes about suicide. Like, that's not fun. And yeah, so it wasn't until I got into improv here that I was able to find new community that helped me get out of it and rebuild my life. But yeah, it was not a fun time. But if you want to know the full story of that, I am planning on publishing a memoir. I've written one. Sharon's reading through it at the moment.
Yep. As I was telling Dominica just before you arrived, mate, that I am currently on page 104 in terms of editing. So far, so good.
Okay.
Of something like 687.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Like it's long right now. It needs to be cut back, or I publish it as 2 books. Like, it's gonna be a while. We'll see.
Yeah, volume 1 and volume 2. Yeah, might as well.
It may be that. We'll see. You can let me know, Sharad, if you think I really need to cut a lot down, or if it's such a good story that it needs to be in 2 volumes. All right, here we go. Next question is a moment when you wore your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah, so I've got one on this, and again, this links back to my illness. But like when I was in Savannah Memorial, I was very, very emotional because doctors warned me that there was a chance that I would never walk again. Ooh. And yeah, it was tough. And my ex came to visit me, which was very, very kind of her. And she was really, really upfront about it. She was like saying, "Listen, like if need be, like I'll stay with you until you get better." And I remember, like that was a big thing for her. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was lifting my my heart on my sleeve kind of thing. I was so tempted. I just wanted to say yes, just come here, feed me soup and massage my feet and like nurse me back to health. But the hardest thing, and it is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I had to let her go. I said, don't feel obligated. You're under no reason to stay with me. And the reasoning behind it was, I told her that it won't be today, it won't be tomorrow, it won't be a week from now, but down the line at some point, you're going to resent me, for this. And I literally told her, you have to go. Thank you. And we remained in touch. She's moved on. She's done very well for herself. I don't talk to her very often, but I'll Facebook stalk her every once in a while to see what she's up to. And she's doing well. So yeah, that was probably for me the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But it worked out.
Yeah, very good. That's a very mature decision to make, especially in the state you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very hard.
I know I have a hard, so I can always fall back on being a scientist and not being in touch with my emotions, which is not necessarily true, because I have the 2 standard male emotions of horny and hungry.
What anger's that in it?
Anger, right? Especially driving. So
it's just like a different version of horny. So
but wearing your heart on your sleeve, I think, well, I mean, I did have a crush on somebody and was rejected in grad school. And I remember, because I knew that I'd get over it. But I do remember that weekend, like taken for like a whole month. Get up on Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Oh, okay. I got a soccer game at 2. Oh, it's 9:30. And it just seemed to drag on forever. For that was one. I had to tell my wife I wanted a divorce. That was kind of tough. Although when neither one of us want to come home to each other, then it's more like let's just stop this. I think when I got laid off from my first job, because I transitioned from academics to industry, and my management couldn't run a company, and we actually had some good technology, but they just blew it. It was a business failure. It wasn't a science failure. And I'm there. I'm single income for the family. We bought a house in San Diego.
Oh wow!
And so our first layoff comes, and the guys I work with in the lab are like super smart guys. And whether you have a PhD or not, I work with some really smart people, and you couldn't get things past them, which I love about, And so we knew our cash was dwindling, and they were all reading the 10K filing forms. And then there's this, this phrase, ongoing concern, that's used in the business world, like it's code for we're running out of cash. And, so they knew layoffs were coming, and they shipped bankers boxes to the loading dock. So we all knew. So the first wave goes, and we knew that, they had to wait a certain amount of time. Otherwise, they had to pay extra money to the first wave. And I got laid off in the second one. I'm like, okay, we'll get through this. And my guy that had the office next to me goes, oh yeah, we're getting laid off. And I'm like, how can you be so okay about it? And he goes, oh, it's biotech. You stick here long enough, you're always going to get laid off. And so this is the second one. And I'm like, okay, I know how this is going to go. But it was tough. And I didn't know. And I have a PhD. So you can't just like go, I'll just work in your lab for a little bit. They won't they won't hire you for that if you progress to where you're supposed to produce things with your brain. And so I'm like, oh, this is getting scary, and had written my last mortgage check. And I was really stressed at that point. And then like 2 weeks later, I had 3 job offers. So it was like, oh my gosh, it's like, what a roller coaster. And so my company, got purchased, and we all shut down at the end of mid-December. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm okay. But this is a better exit than the first one, because we got sold instead of shutting down. But that was, I thought, oh, I'll get in shape. I'll ride my bike. I'll do all this stuff. And I was just stressed. I sat in front of the computer all day and was like, I need a job. And so I do, I feel for like some of the people in the US government getting canned with very little notice. And I don't think they're going to get taken care of as like they should. And that is stressful. And I think we should have a better society where at least, like I can get a place to food to eat and my healthcare taken care of and stuff. And we just aren't smart enough how to figure that out yet.
Yeah, it's strange. Like I've heard in Canada, they have a really good, not welfare policy per se, but when you are laid off, you have some sort of furlough period where you are taken care of.
Yeah.
But, strange. That in New Zealand, I believe.
Yeah. And if you want to talk about efficiency, in the US, we spend twice as much on healthcare and get half the results that we get that they have in Europe. And I honestly think the businesses do not want universal healthcare because it keeps you changing your job.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So this really puts the society under a lot of stress that is unnecessary. We'd have a much better society if we had universal healthcare, even if it was crappy, because it's still probably better than we had before. But it is, it's hard not knowing the future. And the nice thing about getting older is not that you know the future, but you've been through this before, and you're like, okay. Because I was thinking, oh, if we had to get kicked out of the house, where can I go camp on the trails that I know, hidden away from everybody? This is what was going on in my head, because you don't know. Or I could move back to Ohio with my parents, which would have been horrible, both for them and for me. Probably more for them, but yeah, it is. It's hard. It's hard to not know, and it's hard, when you go through emotional things with spouse or girlfriend, or your fantasy. You have a crush on somebody, and they're like, nah, like
Speaking of, that's what my story is going to be. I was trying to think, like, because I'm sure I have a bunch of stories that I could bring up for this, but the ones that come most prominent to mind would be with my Malaysian ex, Lee. Lee is the name that I use for him in his memoir. In my memoir, it's not his real name. Okay. Since you haven't joined us for the stream before, Ed.
Guilty.
You've heard me talk about him in stand-up.
I have,
yeah. And so the first I don't know. I'll tell a few stories, maybe, like brief experiences, I guess. One of the reasons that we became such close friends very quickly was because the first time we hung out one-on-one, like, we went to see a movie, but then after the movie we went to like just a small restaurant and ate there, and then talked for hours until the mall closed. And the stuff that we were talking about was really vulnerable stuff about depression, mental health issues, anxiety, being socially awkward, like all of that kind of thing. So that was like the beginning of us being able to open up about things. But because we had become such close friends, after a while, early on, I'm like, I don't want to be attracted to this guy. Like, I only want to hang out with him as a friend. But like over time, as I'd kind of was flirting with him, just because it was fun, because he didn't have a lot of experience with women, so it was fun to tease him. But over time that grew into me actually developing an attraction for him. It's like, oh fuck, now I'm like, I don't know if I'm being serious or not. But once I figured that out, I was like, oh man, I'm actually crushing on him, and I don't know if he feels the same way, despite the fact that he had previously told me, like very, very early on, that when he first saw me perform stand-up comedy, I've talked about this on the stream before, but the first time he saw me do stand-up comedy, he had developed a crush on me. So that was one of the first things that I knew about him when we became friends. Like, even before we became friends, I think he told me that he had seen me perform. But then we had a follow-up conversation. I learned that I asked him directly, did you have a crush on me? Is that why you enjoyed that performance where I bombed and did really badly? And so that was another reason why it was fun to tease him. So like, I knew that he had previously had a crush on me. I didn't think he still did. So once I figured out that I had developed an attraction for him, it was scary to tell him. And it wasn't until after I knew that I was going to be moving here to California that I just kind of went, fuck it. If he rejects me, then I'm only here for a few more months anyway. So no big loss. And so I just remember, like, I couldn't even tell him in person. Like, I tried. Like, I invited him over. We had spent hours, like until 4 a.m. talking one night, and I wanted to tell him then, but it was like too hard to get out, and I ended up developing a cold because of the air conditioning. I was like, ugh. So once I figured out that my cold was partly because I wasn't saying what I was feeling for him, I'm just like, I probably just need to tell him so I can stop being sick. So I remember like opening up Facebook Messenger and like sending him a message, just being super nervous about sharing, and like I was kind of beating around the bush and hoping that he would read between the lines. And fortunately he did, and was like surprised. He was like, oh my goodness, like he was like, he was wondering if that was what's going on, but he didn't want to say anything because was more like saving face. Don't say anything because you don't want to be rejected, kind of stuff. But it was sweet for, you know, us actually opening up and sharing that we both had a mutual crush and we wanted to see where things went. Yeah, and then the other one, another subsequent time that was really challenging for me was telling him that I was in love with him. It took me weeks, like from when I first felt it until when I actually said something, and then he didn't say it back, and I was like, oh my God. And he's still to this day never told me that he was in love with me, never said those words. I feel like he did through his actions, but whether or not he figured that out, I don't know. Because like for me, I feel like the reason I fell in love with him was because a lot of what I was receiving from him, right? But yeah, so those were my heart on my sleeve moments. It's really hard to say what you're feeling.
Yeah.
All right. Ready for another question, or?
Let's go for it.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right. A moment when you were painfully uncool.
Oh my gosh.
Every day?
I feel right now. Just one moment.
There's a couple. So, you know, because I use humor all the time to cope with things, you know, and sometimes it's not really appropriate, but people who know. So there was we were having a lab in college. It was qualitative lab. So you got a vial and you had to figure out like what's in your vial, the, you know, elements that were in your vial. And that was your entire lab for the semester. What's in the vial? Not how much is of each one, just what's in it. And the girl that's right next to me, we were like 3 or 4 weeks in, and she took all her test tubes by accident, hit them in the rack, and they all went crashing on the floor, and everything destroyed. And I start laughing, and she did not take this in such a good way. We actually went out once, like a year and a half later. I think she was still mad about the whole thing. And so that was probably not the most helpful thing I could do. I was clearly, you know, being 20, your brain's not fully developed, and your ability to be emotive toward your fellow human beings is not as developed as it probably should be. So that was one time I felt very uncool, because I was like, oh, not laughing at her. I was like, oh shoot, that really sucks. But she didn't take it that way. It was like, I'm laughing at you, like, oh, you screwed up. And I didn't mean it that way. And I find that sometimes I say things and they do get interpreted in a very different way than I mean them. So that was one. The other one was, you know, I don't know if either of you two cycle enough to know what the clipless pedals are. I mean, they're the clip-in pedals with the little cleats on the bottom. They call them clipless because they used to have toe clips, and the nomenclature sucks. But you have these little cleats and they stick into the pedals, and so when you pull up, your foot doesn't come off. So you have to kick your heels out to kind of get your feet off the pedals and dismount. So I'm getting pretty good at mountain biking, and I've switched over to these pedals, and I'm descending this hill on this pretty tough trail. Going down the bottom, feeling pretty good. And there's a group of guys at the bottom. And I get down to the bottom, I kind of skid in, I'm standing up and I can't get my feet out and I fall right over.
Oh,
and they
no.
bust up laughing. And one of the guys goes, "Oh, new pedals, huh?" And because everybody who cycles has gone through this. You just know that somebody stops and they fall over. This is the new experience for them. So I felt very uncool, but I did appreciate the inside knowledge that took. So those are probably a couple times that I felt pretty uncool.
Wow.
And I think for me, most of my unquote uncool moments happened when I was just getting into my own as a teenager. Like honestly, from about 13 to maybe 18, that 5-year gap, that was my very uncool phase, I think. I mean, like the one that really springs to mind is my godmother lived in Bristol in England, and at the time I was in Surrey, which is about half an hour south of London. And for the holidays, I was like, I haven't seen her in a bit. I'll go up and visit, and it was lovely. It was a fantastic time. And her daughter was 1 year my senior, lovely girlfriend. And but it just got so awkward because she would encourage me to come out with her and her friends, and all her friends were much older than us. And obviously the thing of you wanting to fit in so much with these senior cool people. And I remember that this one thing that I will never ever forget. It still haunts me like over 20 years later. It's there were 3 of us in one of their bedrooms, and there's like different beds in this one room. And I remember like they were all talking about something about that happened the week before, a few weeks or whatever. And I just tried to interject when I was just like, oh, that's such a cool story. I feel so much better knowing about that story. Everyone just looked at each other, shared eye contact, and had that awkward laugh. Like everyone's like, what? And I just crawled underneath this bed sheet, and I didn't want to come out ever again. And ever since then, like I've just learned the golden rule: just keep your mouth shut when in doubt.
When in doubt,
so yeah, keep your mouth shut. Obviously, as a kid, you want to be the center of attention, so that kind of reinforces. You don't always have to be.
Yes,
and that usually turned out pretty well.
Yes. How vulnerable you want to get? Because I have another one that I'm willing to share, which is
sure. Go ahead.
New sexual partner, right? And this is after my first marriage ended, and I managed to last like 30 seconds. And I'm like,
good.
Oh gosh, this is supposed to happen to an 18-year-old.
So was it your first sexual partner?
No. This is
after your
right, yeah,
first marriage, though.
Yeah. So I was more mature, and I'm like, and I felt just like a teenager. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I had more stamina than this, but no, she was very nice about it. But
we've all been there, pal. We've all been there.
I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a teenager.
You want some more? I bet you do, but I'm sleepy. So.
It's okay. One of the stories, like Sharad, my most uncool years would have been my high school years. And so one of the stories that comes to mind, I guess, because I was a bit of a loner, I kind of had different friend groups that I went between, but was never really very social with any of them throughout my entire high school years. So I don't remember if I was with a group of friends at the time or not when this happened, but there was this guy, and I can't remember if he was one of the people that I had a crush on at the time or not, but at some point, I'm pretty sure I had a crush on him. But anyway, this guy, he was a bully, and because you always have crushes on the bullies for some reason,
Bad
at least
boys.
if you're me, I guess. And anyway, I didn't no more crush after this incident. I swear, for sure. But I just remembered, like, he had filled a condom full of chocolate milk and dumped it in my backpack, and like just for fun. And I found it very, very upsetting.
Yeah.
And you know, I was undiagnosed autistic at the time, so like I'm a big rule follower, like so I dumped him in. Went to the principal or whoever it was that was in charge of me, who I had to talk to about it, and he got suspended for like 3 days, a week, something, I don't know, like a decent amount of time. And like I had to talk to the school psychologist about it, like all of this. Like, I'm like, I have all these problems. So that was one incident. I was like, clearly, because you know, it's very uncool to, you know, tattletale, right? I remember, oh my god, another. So I grew up in on the west coast of Australia in a town called Rockingham, and the high school I went to, you could walk to the beach from there. It wasn't a quick walk, but you could walk there. So there was one day that we went on a field trip to the beach, and my swimwear at the time, you know, like all of the, you know, popular girls and stuff, they're wearing bikinis and like, you know, sexy swimwear and stuff. My swimwear was, you know, the full t-shirt swimwear and like shorts, you know, in the swimwear material, lycra. A really uncool, but
practical, very practical.
Saves you from the sun swimwear, that stuff. And I was a chubby kid, so you know, wearing that was like, I remember the color of it was like aqua color and orange, I think maybe.
Ooh.
Bold choice.
Oh my god. So that's another one, you know, having to wear that and swimming at the beach in front of all of my you know, all the other classmates. Yeah, that's the word. Another one, I used to do a catwalk modeling class when I was from 7th grade to 8th grade, I think. And I remember, like, my mum was great at sewing, loved sewing clothes, homemade clothes for me and my siblings. And cool. And one of the things we got to do as part of the class was like a photo shoot. And my mum had made me this bright neon colored, like orange and purple and yellow, I think, jumpsuit, like full body jumpsuit. And I was wearing that with like I think I might have had a purple t-shirt on underneath as well, and like a belt. It's like so, like the most uncool fashion ever. But you know, like I loved my mum's sewing, and you know, but I was not a cool kid.
I can relate. Funny.
Clearly trying to be cool. Like, well, I'm gonna do modeling classes. I want to be like you know, one of those girls that is like, I'm not. I was not at all.
But good for you for trying.
Yeah. Yeah. I was good at it. I just wasn't. I didn't have the looks for it.
Huh.
So, yeah. Any other painfully uncool stories you want to share before we move on?
I'm good. I'm very uncool, but nothing will top that.
Most of my life is uncool stories. Yeah. So
yeah,
a few.
I feel like nowadays, I still think I'm painfully uncool, but I own it, right? And I just like am being my authentic self and doing dumb shit. And but I think there are people that admire me for that, and so they think they see me as cool because I do stuff that is not actually cool. But I'm just like, I'm being myself.
If you embrace it, then
It
you
is. Yeah.
That's how it is. Yeah.
It is. And you know, there's nothing cooler than open mic stand-up comedy, right? These are the coolest people on the face of the earth.
All cool kids.
Yes.
Everyone does it to get laid, right? No one gets laid doing it.
No one gets laid.
Everyone gets it after each session. Yeah.
That's why they do it, because they want to get laid. No, but like, okay, so relatedly, to the, you know, me just being my authentic self and doing dumb shit. I think this is how I end up with the people who are attracted to me. Like, the men who are attracted to me, they're attracted to me being a dumbass, doing dumb shit, because like I'm just embracing who I am, and they admire that, right? And so like I this week I had one of my exes reached out to me, and like he's been sending me messages but like not replying when I reply, and I was like, and so I just like messaged him. I was like, do you actually want to have a conversation, some back and forth, or you just want to send me messages and then ignore my response? And so he was telling me about how he's kind of admired who I've been over the years, and he really wants to see the person that I'm becoming now, because, you know, I'm clearly coming into another version of myself. And I was like, I guess.
Doesn't quite pass the smell test, if you ask me.
It was what? The smell test?
Doesn't quite pass it. Yeah, see, even Ed's saying the same thing. Yeah, doesn't quite. No.
He's not coming back to like get involved with me. I have no reason to think that. We've had conversations about that just not going to happen at any point. But he's also asexual now, so, or like he identifies that way. So I was like, and he's also like, when we were together, it was when we were both polyamorous. He still identifies that way, and I do not. So like that's a clear incompatibility. But yeah, it's interesting. Oh, Sharad's got a new background.
Sorry, I'm just playing around with it. So.
But just because you had a conversation doesn't mean he's not going to dump something.
Right.
We might have some viewers with us at the moment, or maybe if it looks like we do on YouTube. If you're watching and you don't want to say anything, perfectly fine. If you would like to ask us some questions to answer, so that I'm not just drawing questions from one of my card decks, feel free to drop us a question in the chat. We'd love to answer them for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, ready for a next question?
Sure. Next question.
Okay. A moment when you threw look at my Australian accent. A moment when you threw a shit fit. They censored it on this card. I just want to show you.
Oh, that's funny.
There you go.
Huh.
I've got a good one.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna go with this. This is while I was still married, and part of me was still like hanging on to the marriage, some kind of hope, even though I didn't really have a lot of hope. But it was not long before I ended up deciding I was done. But there was one night where my ex-husband and he had one of his partners was staying over, and he was giving her attention, and I was feeling really emotional about something, and I can't even remember what it was that was bothering me. It might have just been the fact that he was spending time with her and I wanted attention. But I ended up like stomping through the house and like going downstairs and opening the back door and slamming it shut and like just trying to make all this noise to get my ex-husband's attention. And when he eventually came down to find me, I was like curled up in a ball underneath the pool table. Um, and finally I had his attention. I was like, that's what it took. Like,
Wow.
this is what kind of person he is. Like, he can't tell that somebody likes him unless they're causing some kind of drama.
Ooh.
Or
Dum,
you
dum,
know,
dum,
they
dum.
need to be dramatic, and then he knows, oh, this person wants me. So yeah, I had to be dramatic, like, because you know, prior to that, like anytime he was like a dick to me, I just kind of sucked it up, or you know, kept it to myself, and you know, got on with my life, kind of thing. And I was like,
Sure.
no, at that point I was still, part of me wanted to salvage the relationship. But that was not very long lasting. Yeah, so that was my shit fits. Stomping through my kids were asleep at the time, let's be
Okay.
fair. Like, they didn't know what was going on. Yeah.
And have you got one?
Well, generally mine are focused around computers, which is
Please.
one of the reasons I don't use any Microsoft products, because I just think I hate Microsoft.
Interesting.
So
What's your beef with Microsoft?
well, they're operating system. I mean, so normally, you know, I had an office in my two jobs ago, and people would hear me pounding the table for, you know, my desk, like, what the fuck is going on? And you know, and generally it's just the computer not doing something I want it to do, because it's a machine. It's supposed to do what you tell it to do. And I'm actually pretty smart and good at computers, so I knew it wasn't, you know, an ID10T problem. Which, for the, you know what an ID10T problem is?
Sure.
Oh, you do? Okay.
No.
So, you don't? Okay. So just picture it, ID10T. And that's,
Idiot problem. There you
Oh,
go.
oh, oh.
they use that in
Yeah.
IT, and they'll go, oh, that's an ID10T problem, blaming you, and you won't know. So
That's some smart ass thing to say.
now you know. And so
No wonder you're pissed.
So generally, was one of those things. So that's generally what got me mad. So now I use Mac and Linux, but sports really got it. And I do remember, like in summer league, when I was playing soccer, I had scored a goal, but the ref missed it. I mean, both teams stopped, and you know, they had the goals, and it wasn't like the professional ones where you had the net hanging off the back and whatever. It had the crossbars going down the back and had a frame on the bottom. So it went in and it hit off that one in the back and bounced back out, and so the ref missed it. And so then later in the game, I scored another goal, and then I went and kicked it in the net a second time, and I turned over and said, "Did you see that one?" And immediately got a caution.
That's hilarious.
For that. But I do tend to get very emotional at sports until I took a refereeing class, and then I realized that I was being an idiot. So that kind of had that behavior.
That's pretty good.
That's what it takes sometimes, like doing something to see the other person's perspective. Like, oh, I was wrong.
Yes, I was wrong. I was totally wrong many times with that. Yes, I would. I tell kids now, I would have been, if I could do my soccer career over. I played, I coached, I was a referee. I would have been a referee much earlier on, because it would have made me a better player and coach. But you know, live and learn.
As in, you're always watching the referee to make sure that he's watching you when you score a goal. Don't shoot until they're actually looking at you.
You see that? Yeah.
That's great.
I think for me, like Well, let's see. This one is again going back to my illness. Like I want to say over a year, I was wheelchair bound. Like
Ooh.
like no strength at all. Even like intense physiotherapy, 3 hours a day for I think 4 days a week. Like it was really hardcore. And one thing nothing really prepared me was if you're a seemingly normal looking adult in a wheelchair in public, people don't just stare, they'll ask questions. As in when, I don't know about you guys, but in Malaysia, there's no filter at all. Like, you know, like for example, and I still remember this, I was in a shopping mall with my mum, and I was in a wheelchair. And we got to an elevator, and this man out of nowhere just comes in and goes, "What's a young man like you doing in a wheelchair?" And I just started freaking out, and I just didn't know what to do. But as time went on, I just realized let's have some fun with this. Let's see what we can do. And I remember I was in a grocery market, a supermarket, and because I couldn't feel my legs, I just figured, okay, let's just put the basket on top of me, put the stuff on top. So I mean, it won't hurt me, right? And this another guy came up with his wife, and he looked at me, and he's like, "What? So, like just no introduction, no hello, just went, what's wrong with you?" Just that's the first thing they said to me, and I just thought, all right. So, well, I didn't want to say anything, but do you really want to know? And they're like, yeah. What happened? I'm like, well, I was in Genting Highlands, which is like a casino resort in Malaysia. And I was like, I don't know, some guy just kind of looked at me funny, and I just took a knife out, and like unfortunately, we started fighting around. I fell down some stairs, but he's still in intensive care. So all in all, it worked out okay. I think he's okay. I don't think he can eat for a while. And I kept on going and going and going and going, and you could see that like the almost like the monkey inside their head with the symbols just doing that in their head, just going. And I just couldn't stop. And I remember, like, eventually they were like, "Oh, okay, have a good day." I walk off, and I turned around, and my mum was there. She was outside. She was like, "Brilliant." So yeah. So in some ways, I mean, like, well, that taught me in itself, like, you gotta have fun with it. Obviously, like, you can't control other people. Mm-hmm. All you can do is control yourself. And if it sparks up something fun, why not?
Very good.
Yeah.
I can't do embellishing stories or like making shit up like that.
You're a performer, of course you can.
No, I know. But all of my jokes are like based in truth. Ed's seen them. Like, even just my nutso stories are like still based on true things that happened. It's really hard because this is one of my autistic things. Is like I feel really guilty if I lie about things, even if it's just really innocuous. I'm just like, it doesn't feel right to make stuff up. So yeah, I don't think I could do that. I admire, I guess, people who can, as long as they're not doing it for nefarious purposes. Because I've been lied to. I don't like being on the receiving end of it. But I mean, this is one of the reasons like this stream is good. I mean, there's the lying to oneself thing from a few weeks ago. Is like, what was the biggest lie? What's the biggest lie that you've told that you've told so much that you believe or something? So you can have those periods where you might be lying to yourself or gaslighting yourself into things, but that's different than intentionally and knowing that you're lying, right? Because it's like, I want to believe this thing. But I think that's what I get angry when then this is making me think of other stuff when people's perceptions of me are incorrect. But like they can have their own narrative in their head about what's going on, and then they'll tell me about it and I'll be like, that's not true. And then I want to throw a shit fit. Like, that you're wrong. You're wrong about that. And I need to go into like a spiel. This is
What
one
do
of
people go? Dominique is a vegan. Like one of those.
No, but like, so the recent example that's coming to mind is the ex that I mentioned, who just kind of was talking to me recently. One of the things that he said is like, he's been talking about how his perception is that he didn't mean anything to me because of XYZ reasons. And I'm just like, dude, that's so like, I wanted to go off at him and be like, that's very like victim mindset for me. And when you have that kind of attitude that you will express that to me, it's going to kind of make me not have as good of an opinion of you as what I would have if you were able to perceive that you were important to me, or that, like, you know. So I think it's very important to listen to what people actually say and not like get the short end of the stick and
What'd you say?
the short end of the stick.
What was that?
What was that?
What was that?
That's what I said. But yeah, like, I feel like I've had these kinds of experiences that just get so frustrating for me. It's like, dude, like, you can have a poor opinion of yourself, but if you're going to go around expressing it to people, then other people are going to start thinking about you the same way. Whereas if you, like, even if you don't have self-confidence, at least pretend you do to other people so that they won't, like, not want to be around you.
I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, like even if, let's say, you're reaching out to people for help, maybe you're in a morally low place or what have you, if that becomes your entire persona.
Yeah.
I mean, put it this way: if you have a friend that's always messaging you saying, "Hey, I feel low, I could do with some help," obviously your inclination is to help out. But when every day they're like, "Hey, man, like I feel negative," after a while, it's just going to be, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" You see that name popping up on your phone, and you're like,
if then,
so yeah,
especially if they don't seem to be taking any action to try and improve things for themselves. And you know, like, this person, he was a great part of my life for the times that we have been close friends, but the not seeing that he's made any progress in his attitude about things makes me wonder like, what kind of friendship we can have if he's not willing to kind of grow. Like, if he admires me for the growth and changes that I've made, that doesn't come out of nowhere. That's because of effort. That's because I have done a lot of internal thinking and reflection and work, and read so much content about like self-improvement type stuff, and trying to understand relationships better, and deciding I want to be a better person, right? That's not from, oh, it just happens naturally. Right? It takes work, and it has to be an active decision. So yeah, active decision to not throw shit fits. Let's tie it back to that question.
yeah.
Do I want to be the kind of person that throws shit fits, or do I want to be the kind of person that makes other people's lives more bearable?
But at the same time, isn't it a little bit of fun and a bit cathartic to just let loose every once in a while? Sometimes. You're allowed one, let's say, every blue moon, where you're just like, I think I'm due. I think I'm due. Yeah.
It depends on how you channel it as well, I think. Like, you could make an argument for me writing my memoir as a shit fit, because of me being frustrated by the way that things ended with Lee, and being like, well, I'm going to write about it then. But I mean, that wasn't that's not the purpose of it. It was more self-reflection, and it's a great story that I really want to share with people. And yeah, so even in those moments where there are people that don't treat you the best of ways, you can still kind of decide how you frame that in your mind, and decide what narrative you want to go with that. You can be like, oh, that person was shitty to me, and so they're a shitty person. Or you can be like, oh, that person was shitty, but what am I learning from this? How do I want to respond? Like, sit back and reflect, and that sort of thing. Reflect, well, what was it that might have caused them to behave that way? Can I empathize with them? Yes, maybe. Does that mean I can stay connected to them? Not always. There's a lot of questions that can kind of come up with that, but I feel like self-perception and just perception of the world around you makes a huge difference to the relationships you can have.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's tricky because we've had this conversation before, Ed, where we're saying that in our minds, I would say with the most of us, like we all have main character syndrome. We all believe we are the hero of the story. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very tricky.
It is, but when you get older, so I'm pushing 60, although going on 13 in many ways.
Me too.
It's not cool to lose your cool over stuff. And I was kind of a victim of somebody having a shit fit. And because this was a couple years ago, and I've told this story in stand-up before.
Oh.
But, so one of the things that the world's built around is automobiles. It's not built for humans. It's built for automobiles. And in California, this is during COVID, and I was coming home on my bike before I got an electric scooter and lazy. And so I come up this three-way stop, and I stop, and there's two cars that the guy's turning right. So the first guy turns right, and then I start going, and then the second guy turns right, but he never stopped. And he pulls out in front of me. So I get very vocal on there, but it's intentionally vocal. So I'm like, hey, and he throws something out the window at me, and I flip him off like, fuck you, asshole. And he stops his car. He gets out, and it's this guy. It's 5'6", but he's a black guy, so I don't know like what he's gonna do. And he's like, so he gets out, and so I stop and I stand on my bike and I look at him. And so he comes over, and like he's looking like he's gonna hit me. And I'm like, okay, take a swing, because I think he's just gonna like come and the guy hauls off and hits me, just punches me right in the face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the guy punched me in the face. And I didn't do anything because I actually have a camera on the front of my bike, so all this is on video. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I thought he was kind of like my age. You never could tell, so you just kind of, you always assume somebody's your age. And then this woman sees this from behind, and she pulls up. Why did you hit him? I saw you hit him. And she starts going off.
Full Karen. Yeah, nice.
And so he goes over and slaps her. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, dude, I was going to let you go with me because I got all on video. I can call the police. I can tell them what's going on. They have video evidence, whatever. You just involved somebody else that was just yelling at you. This is not okay. So I went to try to stop him. And this is where, get emotionally aroused in the situation. So I don't know exactly what happened at the time. I know what happened now, but I didn't know what happened at the time. And the next thing I knew, I was laying on top of him with a chokehold, and he's like trying to break my finger to get me off. And then he goes, I can't breathe. And there's people on the side of the road. So, the guy in well, oh shoot, what's that? I blanked on his
George
name.
Floyd.
Yes, George Floyd, where he got arrested for stealing $20, right? He can't breathe and he ends up dead because the cop's sitting on top of him. So I know how this looks. And I see these people standing there and I'm like, oh, please video. Take your phones out and video. And so they all just start, right? Because I need to give them something to do so they don't mess with
That's
me.
really smart. That's very smart.
Because I'm on top of him. And so I released my hold a little bit. And he's like, I know what you racists think. And the woman just goes off. I'm not racist. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm right on top of him thinking, my ex used to say, I know what you think. Are you thinking what I'm reading? Are you reading what I'm thinking right now? You superior mind reader. I'm going to punch you in the face for reminding me of my ex. Just what's going on in my head. Cause I know, I don't want to hurt the guy. And so eventually the cops come. The cop goes, oh, were you a wrestler in high school? You took him down really well. Are you kidding me?
WWE tryouts.
And at some point I'm sitting over by the woman and I'm like, listen, he called you a racist, and I'm sure you totally convinced him by yelling back at him that you're not a racist. Right? This is not the time to try to have this discussion with the guy. So turns out when I went back to look at the video to see what happened, the guy just happened to stumble in the middle of the street, and I went and laid on top of him. So there was no like good wrestling moves. This was not entertainment or anything. I still have the video for this.
That's amazing.
And I had to put him under citizen's arrest. And it turns out, oh my goodness, the guy was like 82. And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's 82. I hope to God I am that ambitious when I'm 82.
Yeah, dude.
With better decision-making capacity. I'm as ambitious as he was. And so, I didn't want him to get sent to jail. He got pre-trial diversion and stuff. But it never helps you to think when your emotions are aroused. And, so that's one of the things I've learned along the way, that you just can't, no drama. Drama doesn't help you think through all problems. So that was kind of a funny story. Ultimately, nobody got really hurt through any of this. I mean, I got a little bruise up here and had to have a funny story to tell. And I was really worried because, if you're 82 and you're starting to do this, maybe there's something else going on that your family really should know about. Help the guy out, and don't do this again. And stop at the stop signs. Please do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
When you're supposed to do it, don't make stuff up. Because, being predictable for each other really just helps society move along. And not like I'm the center of attention. But it was, he lost his cool at me because I kind of baited him into it. But I still yell at people when I'm on my bike or scooter because they weigh 5,000 pounds and I only weigh 250. So that's, I want them to know I'm a vulnerable road user because you can squash me with your car.
Yeah.
Crazy story.
See, you mentioning the kind of baiting him into it just makes me think of all my unintentional/intentional baiting that I've been doing on
You know how to do that.
my videos. I do have a thing of knowing how to push buttons. I have actually another ex that I've been flirting with this week, and
I'm noticing a pattern here.
I do know that,
very good. I have a thing about exes.
Your favorite letter of the alphabet.
Something like
literally letting your XYZ, just the X, please. Yeah.
No. And I just sent him a message this week, and I was just like, FYI, I really want to expletive you right now. Or something to that effect. We have boundaries. Like, we're not, there's a reason that we're not together, but we're both like know that we're still attracted to each other, kind of thing, and anything could happen at any time if the opportunity arose, that we're just have decided not to. So sometimes I'll go through these moments. It was like, I just want to confirm that he's still, that I still can
Have
have an effect on him.
Okay.
Vicious, absolutely vicious.
And yeah, so I did that, and he's like, I'm gonna respect your boundaries. But then he'll say things as like, I'm being on my best behavior right now, but there's if you're thinking that I'm thinking something, you would be wrong. I'm thinking something 10 times worse. I'm just like, nice. Like, I don't need to know the details. I'm just like, no, I know how to bait you. Because I know if I wanted to push things so far that we actually did something, I know how to do it. But I also know where the line is, and I know how to like just go right up to the line. And I feel like that's kind of what I've been doing with and it wasn't intentional at first when I started doing videos that I was sharing online, like comments. There was like anti Trump's type stuff or whatever. Like I was just looking for audience of people who agreed with me and like making jokes, but when it starts attracting, MAGA types, then I'm like, oh, that is a possibility when it's a public post, I suppose. So my latest one this week was just me talking, like giving a quick review of the movie Companion, but I talked about there's one demographic of audience that I think would not appreciate the film, and that's the entitled cis white guy.
Oh,
made sure to preface it with entitled, because there's plenty of cis white guys that I'm sure would enjoy the film, but there's one moment in the film where like there weren't very many people in the theater when I went to see it, but the people who were there just cracked up laughing, and it was a joke at the entitled white cis white guy's expense, kind of thing. And so that was why I made that comment. It was like, just FYI, some advice, you might not want to see it because you'll get like angry at it. But then like the comments is like people like, why do you think like cis, like, or like people that are okay, the first filtered comment I got was just someone responding bigots, like as if you can be a bigot for
just go sure
calling out that specific demographic. Not really. When that's like the top like tier of your
so as a member of that demographic, I wish to say
how dare you
that we are quite ridiculous. Yes.
No, in the cis white guy, but you're not the entitled type, so that's the difference, right?
No, I try not to be. I mean, we have such a short
today.
That the older you get, the more ridiculous we are. You just kind of have to embrace it, right? Yeah.
Right. That was the point of it, right? Like, I know that cis white guys who are not entitled are not going to have a problem with being called a cis white guy.
Yeah.
And that's why I needed to preface it with entitled. And then like, of course, these guys that, take offense to it, they think that you're talking about all cis white guys. And they also don't like the term cis and like all of this. And I was like, yeah, but like, so when I woke up this morning, I had seen like there were all these extra comments on this video on TikTok that I wasn't prepared for. But this time I had people like defending me in the comments.
Oh,
like
nice.
to those people, and I'm like, oh, that's different from the other ones. That's nice. So like one person had commented about had dropped the entitled part from their comment, and then this person was like, you missed the most important word in that, which was entitled. Like, yes, exactly. How do you not see that there's a difference?
At some point it's just name calling, right? And did you see the Super Bowl halftime?
I do want to watch it, but
Okay.
I have not watched it yet. I've definitely seen like the commentary about it makes me want to watch it, but I've not got around to it
it's
yet.
interesting. I don't watch this music, rap music or whatever. And I remember the meltdown they had with the rap one a couple years ago, where they had the token white guy in Eminem, and you know, there's actually a movie about the whole rehearsal that went on and the work they put in and everything. Super cool. Because they're artists just like anybody else, right? They rehearse, they want to hit their marks, they want to put on a great performance. But just the meltdown over the halftime show, and you call them names, and it's cracking me up because it's fine. They did a song and dance about you, and you get butthurt about it. I mean, come on, you're supposed to be the party of freedom or whatever, and this sends you off. What's going to happen when something really happens instead of somebody singing and dancing about you? Come on, this is so. We deserve to be made fun of for idiocy like that.
There's no self-awareness and no self-reflection of, if they react like that, then it's like they're the people that it is made to target, I guess.
Exactly.
But if you don't want to be a target, do some self-reflection, come to some self-awareness and see, why does it bother you? And then what can you do to change that?
I mean, it's literally the definition of "you're so vain, I bet you think the song is about you." Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Well, that was another comment of that was on this video this morning. Someone was like, "I don't know what cis white guy is, but like," blah, blah, blah. And someone replied, "Is like, well, if you don't know what it is, or but you think it's about you, then it probably is."
That's fine.
So yeah, so that's funny. I have no patience for, or like, it doesn't get to me nowadays. People coming at me for stupid reasons like that. It's like, if you're going to take offense to it, then that's on you. This is entertainment for me. And yeah, but like in the past, I absolutely would have been, and this is why it took me so long to be on TikTok, right? I had to get to a place, a headspace where I felt like it didn't matter what people would say in the comments.
Doesn't matter.
If it's not going to impact me, then who cares? If it's not going to cause me to be in the dumps all day. Like, I had people commenting on another post, like saying that I looked really old when I was like trying to look really young. And I'm like, am I supposed to be offended by this? One person commented, was like, "Oh," no, one person was like, "Oh, I see your gray hairs. I think you're 46." And my response to them was like, "Oh, thank you for noticing the gray hairs. I'm so proud of those."
Nice. That's awesome.
So, he liked that response. They're like, nice. Like, I'm not, if people want to be rude or mean, then that's on them. That says a lot more about them than it says about me.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. Like, in my experience, any kind of discourse on any kind of public forum, if someone has go at you and it's really below the belt or just unnecessary, if you just flip it and you go, "Oh, thank you for your post. It's for contributing to the conversation. I hope people one full day." They're always just like,
I was prepared for this. I was prepared to battle you to the death.
Yeah.
Over the words you said.
Yes, exactly. I feel like this is a good segue to the next question that I just threw,
go for it,
which is a moment when you were obnoxious.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, in the past hour?
That's kind of what I was doing, right? I was being obnoxious.
Kind of my persona is, being obnoxious, and so like even this morning, I talked with fifth graders, and I had a conversation with one of the girls right at the end as I was leaving. She was one of the more interactive ones in the first class and wants to be a scientist. So, she's asking questions. It's pretty cool. And, so I asked, people ask, well, do you think women are as smart as men? And my answer to that's always no. That's different. And the data I use is, how many women do you see have videos on the Darwin Awards, right? This is all the guys, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly guys are dumber.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I say, yeah, I don't think they're the same. I think the guys are dumber. And she goes, that's why the girls live longer. And I was like, that's exactly right. This is a 10-year-old that's got this, right? And so then I had a call.
She's
with
10? That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Oh, smart girl. And we need
wow.
more of them. So this gives me hope for the future, because I've run into a lot of younger people when I like host Bring Your Kid to Work Day. We got some really sharp children out there that do not think the adults are doing the job they should as responsible adults, and they're not. So this does give me hope for the future. And so I had a call with two of my two women colleagues, and I told them this story because I was like, oh yeah, men and women are not the same kind of smart, and generally they think that I'm going to advocate like I'm smarter. But this is one of the problems I think scientists have, because we know some of the technical stuff, and we're really good at doing the technical stuff. We don't really embrace like, what does it mean quite well. So if we were truly following the data, as soon as we understood that the women could contribute equally or better, we should have been the most inclusive tribe on the face of the earth. And we're still not there, which is really, what are we protecting? Our emotions? I mean, come on. We've got plenty of problems to solve. There's not like they're going to take your problem. There's plenty to do. Very much we don't know. And so, yeah, I do make that joke all the time. Yeah, men and women are not smart, are not the same in terms of smartness. The women are definitely much smarter. And I think hearing it from a cis white guy is kind of shocking, but it is. They are definitely smarter than we are.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, because it's the male fragility that attacks.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
Yes.
And not all men are like that. Not all men, but I mean, this is one of the reasons that I like doing this podcast with my male friends, to show that there are so diverse ways of being a man, right? And it's not this fragility that has to lash out in anger all the time and be macho, or else you're less than. Like, there's so much more to the experience than that.
Very true.
Yeah, because I think if you're broadcasting, you're trying to hide. And going back to academics, I don't know, like, if you remember, I don't know. So in the academic circles, when you get a PhD, you get to wear 3 bands on your robe and the regalia and all this stuff. And I started thinking about, like, what are we trying to avoid? What is all this trying to avoid? And I think it's really trying to avoid that we're dumb. Because most of the thoughts that humans have had over the past, let's say, 3,000 years, when we've written things down, have been blatantly incorrect from a point. And it's not like somehow magically now we're all correct in our thinking.
Oh no. One of those commenters on that TikTok was a flat earther. Like, oh my God, there's a genuine flat earther.
I don't understand. And yeah, I think when you're insecure, you start broadcasting like the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm thinking it's going to make it way more inefficient. If you have to tell me what you're doing, you're not doing it well enough for me to notice.
Yeah. Well, they're making some interesting choices, and I don't mean that in a good way.
Exactly.
Interesting.
They're just fucking stuff up just to mess with it.
Yeah.
No fragility. If you're not fragile, you don't care. That's why I sent you that picture.
Right. Yeah, but like, lean into that and dig into what is it that you're feeling fragile about, and why does it matter, and what can you do to help yourself not feel as fragile?
Stand-up comedy. Hey.
Exactly. No, but I think that there's a lot of strength in vulnerability and embracing those fragile parts of yourself, because so few people actually do it, right? And so that when you do, people see you as brave because you're like, oh my God, this person is bravely speaking up about this issue that is, people don't really talk about. And yeah, that's an amazing thing. It's such a gift to be able to hear those fragile experiences shared from a vulnerable place, because that's how you get through them. If you keep them locked up and hide those fragile parts of you because you don't want people to see them because you're afraid of how they're going to react to it, then it just builds and builds, and then eventually it comes out in unhealthy ways.
Yep.
See it all the time.
I mean, that's the thing. If you break it down, like the way I look at it is, if it can affect at least one person positively, job done.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you never know who's listening or who's watching or whatever.
No, exactly.
We have some cats out back, and a couple of them are like terrified of humans because they're pretty feral. And when I walk out, we have some that are very not. I mean, they'll come up and want me to pet them and stuff. They're like our kind of outdoor pets. But I always wonder what the ones that run away and are afraid do, because they're like, oh wow, that was a close call. I'm glad I escaped that. This is you never know what's going on in the brain of another animal, right? This is you can tell yourself stories to justify anything you feel, but fear. Well, fear is our major motivational emotion, right? I mean, loss aversion from the psychology standpoint is the thing that we are really most afraid about.
Oh yeah.
And we live in such a great world. Oh my gosh, we were better than the kings did 200 years ago. We got Mexican food and Chinese food and Indian food and Pakistani food and Ethiopian food, all just within 10 miles of us.
We can speak. We're having a conversation with people all throughout the world.
All over the world. Oh my gosh, we could have never done this. So we just don't appreciate what we have. And when you're afraid, you just miss it. You just completely miss it. Yeah. And the world's a cool place. People are funny. People are
so funny.
We are really, really flawed people. We're ambulatory electrified fat. And this is, I mean that in a good way. And it's fun. It is really fun. We are social cooperative animals, and it's great to talk to other people and appreciate oh my gosh, this is the details are different, but in many ways, all of this is the same. And it's been the same for the past 1,000 years, no matter where you were at, right? Yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking when you were saying that with us all being funny people, I think one of the advantages to poking fun at yourself in front of other people, whether it's through stand-up comedy or just in a conversation, it's one of those things that gives other people permission to laugh at themselves, and be like, oh, okay, well, if they can laugh at themselves for this stupid thing that they did, then maybe they wouldn't hate me for this stupid thing that I did, So I think that's a really valuable experience to have.
For sure.
All right, Sharad, you got a moment when you were obnoxious?
Oh.
Or do you feel like that you kind of answered that with the last question?
Oh God, there's so many. So many. This is going to be all my obnoxious ones. Oh gosh. Oh boy, where do I begin? I think this. Okay, so when I was in school, I would play football, or what you guys call soccer,
okay.
like quite often, and I was always either the right back, center back, or my main position was the goalkeeper, because as a kid, they'd always put the fat kid in goal because he'd just block up anything. But it got to a point where over the years, I just played, and I played in that position. I ended up becoming decent at it over time. And the obnoxious thing was, I started watching too much English Premier League football, particularly how the goalkeepers acted. And I thought, okay, how obnoxious can I be to put other people off? Especially, let's say, if it's a one-on-one situation or in a penalty, to distract the other person, get to like play a bit of mind games. Mind you, I'm 14, 15, 16 years old. There's no need for mind games. There's none. And I just remember like whenever someone was taking a free kick or even lining up, like standing nearby me, I'll just be like, "Hey, buddy, like my center back's gonna he's pretty mean. Might want to watch your ankles, that, and just be really obnoxious, like, hey, number 24, like your shoelace is untied, then he'll miss a ball, and I'll just put zingers out. I'll be like, I'll look at the bench and go, why aren't you guys playing? You guys suck, and just really badmouth people. And I didn't do this to be mean, but like my obnoxious side was if I can just put them off. And then after the game, I'll just be like, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm actually a really nice person. I just didn't want you to score against me, please. I hope you have a wonderful day. Here's an energy boosting drink. Lovely to meet you. And they'll just stare at me and they'll be like, what are you doing? And my friends, the defenders in front of me will just be like, crazy. But I mean, why not? If it worked, it worked. And it was harmless, I suppose. It was pretty harmless.
It was pretty harmless on the football pitch. Yeah.
There are harmful and harmless obnoxious moments. So I have a harmless one as well. The thought that came to mind for me was in, I think it was 10th grade science class. I remember like answering some questions and it's possible it was math instead. But I remember answering some questions and like the solution that we were given was wrong or something, and so I like had to confront the teacher. I was like, "Hey, your answer's wrong."
Oh no!
And then they're like looking at it, it's like,
"What
so you're right." So that's my level of obnoxiousness.
Hey, but at least you were correct in pointing it out, because
it's true. I wanted to be an obnoxious parent when my daughter had a similar thing. Like I was going through like some of her homework that was marked, and my daughter had answered it correctly based on how the question was phrased, but it was marked incorrect because the question had a typo in it. And so the answer was something else. And I just like want to be like, why did you give her a 1 point off for this? Because it's actually technically correct. I don't think I ended up actually going to the teacher and talking about it, but because like 1 point, like it wasn't actually worth much, if anything, of her grade.
Yeah.
But like just the fact that it was like, don't mark a. I think I was like to my daughter, I was like, your answer is correct. Don't worry. Like, whatever.
I can understand that, because as a writer, that would irk me. That would seriously irk me.
Because if it's a typo, like, come on. Like, look, like you can't expect the correct answer if the question is wrong. You have one too many zeros here or something like that. Like, it was just one of those kinds of things. Yeah, I don't think I have any other examples of me. Okay. I wasn't even being deliberately obnoxious, but it did remind me of another, and I can't remember if I've talked about this on the stream before or not, but it doesn't matter. Nobody watches every episode except maybe my dad. And whoever was watching 5.5 episodes in a row yesterday / this morning.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I would love to know who you are.
Cheers for the engagement. Yeah.
I have so few people watching that it's very fascinating to see like someone going from like suggested video to suggested video. But anyway, I'm digressing. So there was this this is something that grated on my ex-husband for me doing, that he held a grudge against me for it for years afterwards, and sometimes would bring it up during arguments as evidence of why I am blunt and have no tact. And I was like, I've clearly learned since then and would not do that now, but apparently I don't change according to you. So what this was,
Tell us how you really feel. Yeah.
Hold grudges forever. How to not have a healthy relationship. Anyway, so we were part of well, he brought me into his like theater group of friends, like his acting friends, and one of them was talking about her business, which was one of the, I don't remember which one, but it was one of those pyramid kind of companies where you sell your like makeup or skincare products and stuff to your friends. And so this lady was talking about her business, and I just made a comment. It's like, I don't use skincare products, so I'm not interested. Like I know. Oh, okay. So what I actually said, this is the thing that my ex-husband had a grudge at me for. It's like, I said, I think it's a waste of money to spend on skincare products. Like, it's just, to me, it's not what I want to spend my money on. And so my ex-husband, like afterwards, he was like, that was so rude. You shouldn't like, say something like that to someone who's like trying to promote their business. And like afterwards I reflected back on it. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that was kind of like, I did learn from it, right? I'm not going to go and say something like that nowadays. I'm a little bit more sensitive to people's feelings now, because I was like 21 or 22 at the time, and bluntly autistic, that I just told it like it is. I had no filter. And I'm trying to get back to me being that me that has no filter. Like, I don't care. But still with some politeness. Some sensitivities. But yeah, that was absolutely, I was obnoxious to say that in that moment.
Actually, like I wanted to ask you, like in your field, I imagine you must probably deal with a fair amount of narcissists, don't you?
So at some, yeah, I do. And
do you ever have like anyone that that just reeks of being obnoxious?
Yes, there are people on my list that I will not work with again.
Wow.
And it's really because, again, lack of self-reflection. Like you go through, oh, I know it's right. I know how to do this. I don't need any help. And it's really, it's just so uncurious. It's not even about humility, but it's just uncurious, right? You don't, because we've thought about things so incorrectly. Like I'm going to gripe on the philosophers a little bit, because we still teach Aristotle in college, right? Well, he thought the brain was a radiator. He thought your thoughts came from your heart and your brain was there to efflux the heat, which is not a bad thought, because you need more surface area, and so all the bumps on the top gave you more surface area. But he was incorrect, and I just can't stand it. So this is really one of my pet peeves, when you come into science, you're like, oh, I know how this works, and you don't, and so I just do not take kindly to this, and the MDs are the worst in many ways, because they get trained, and the patient comes in, oh, doctor, what do you need? And even calling you doctor, right? I mean, I'm a doctor. I'm not insecure about my doctorate. I know I have one. I've met too many dumb PhDs and too many smart non-PhDs. Doesn't matter. And you're just another person. So this one kid was doing a rotation, and he was an MD student, and he just thought of I'm the king of the world, right? So he's in the lab, and we'd take and dump dry ice in the sink, and let it sublimate to get rid of it. And I was like, and he was just pissing me off one day. I said, you know what's really cool you know, turn the faucet on and then stick your head in and go through your nostrils. And it's a really cool experience. And he did. And I don't know if you've ever, so dry ice is carbon dioxide. And if you've ever like sneezed soda through your nose, you know how much it burns. Oh my goodness, he comes out, oh, you know. And the guy that was the professional in the lab, I was a student at the time. The actual guy that was getting paid to be in the lab full time was cracking up because he was just so annoyed with him because he just thought he knew everything. And I'm like, you know, just smacked out. So now I know better ways to do this. Like asking questions rather than getting somebody to, you know, kind of, you know, risk acidosis because they've inhaled too much carbon dioxide. But
he chose not to violence.
Yeah. But he did it. He listened to me, and I'm like, dude, you've got to know how things work. And this is what I tell the kids. Like, if you know how things work in the world physically, not like the stuff that people make up, like laws and politics or whatever, religion, you know, not that stuff, the physical world, like how does your toilet work? How does your plumbing work? We are just so unversed about any of this. And you're a writer. I mean, this would be cool to be able to work some of this in to like kind of sneak teach the population
how to fix your own plumbing.
No, because you know, in a toilet, I was a night janitor in a toilet factory for 2 summers of all things, and this is a good experience to work in a blue collar, you know, area. And these guys are stuck. I mean, they came out of high school. One guy was this mid-level athlete who had a scholarship to go to school, knocked up a girl when he was a sophomore, had to drop out of school, got this job. And here they were like mid-30s and like, oh, this is going to be my career for the rest of my life, you know, pouring bowls and cleaning them up and sending them off to the kiln. And, you know, I got no prospects ahead of me. And it's really kind of scary to get stuck in a situation like that because you've made dumb decisions when you're younger. And we can help each other do better just by not being so afraid to be wrong. But you know, I did have a story about being obnoxious. Imagine this: I was obnoxious on purpose, and I was a senior in high school, so I had a civics teacher who would jingle his keys in his pocket all the time as he was teaching, and I didn't remember this, but apparently my parents told me a couple years ago and I was like, oh yeah, I do remember doing this. And so he asked some question, and I was thinking it was the only one in the class that knew the answer. So he called on me, and I stood up, and I'm giving the answer. I start jingling my keys in my pocket to mimic him, giving him the correct answer. And apparently the class just busted up laughing. And I don't remember doing it, but he couldn't really get mad at me because I was completely on track with the lesson. But I managed to sneak in an insult toward him along the way. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, because that's what I do now. You know, if I can, you know, insult somebody and compliment him at the same time, then I think I've been successful.
And not in a backhanded compliment way.
Not in a backhanded compliment way. I was just, you know, but I was much younger then. But I can be obnoxious on purpose.
Well, you know what they say, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So there you go.
He did not think it was flattery. He was not.
Like, you smug son of a bitch.
My parents thought it was hysterical. Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know why, but that story reminded me of an experience I had in high school with, I think it was when I was in 11th grade, and it was with my, I think he was my chemistry teacher at the time. He could have been my physics teacher. Like they swapped around. And he, like, there was one class he didn't want to teach, and so he was like, I'm gonna, you know, bring in a TV. And I'd brought in an R-rated VHS tape. R in Australia is 18 plus, so it's
Okay.
restricted. And it was a videotape of this Australian comedy group called the Doug Anthony All Stars, and they have this song about having intimate relationships with dogs in
As
this
you would.
video.
As you would.
And you know, he just let me like play this video, so the entire classroom left the classroom, so he had no idea what we were watching, right? Like he just didn't want to teach. So that was a fun day.
Fair enough.
Wow.
You know what they say, you F around, you find out. There you go.
That's great.
I secretly bought this video at I think one of the local markets or something. I saw it. Like they didn't check my ID or anything. They just let me buy it. I was like,
yeah, whatever, dude. Like, yeah, just give me the money.
I hid it from my mom. She had no idea. Like I could just watch this stuff when I was at home on my own, so it was not a big deal. It wasn't like porn or anything. It was just like that particular song was very inappropriate and was probably the one that made it rated R, because most of their content was not rated as high as that by the ratings board in Australia. But yeah. Then there was another thing that came up for me. I was thinking when you were Ed, you were talking about the people that think that they're always right, and that's very much who my ex-husband was. It's like he just has all these ideas in his head that he thinks he's right all the time, that he can't possibly be wrong about things, and that's how he ends up making mistakes, because he doesn't want to get help from anyone. You know, and yeah, I think that was one of the downfalls of our marriage. You know, that entitlement and thinking he was right and he was always going to be the best. And like, can you like maybe seek some advice from other people and maybe not think that you know everything and that all your opinions are the only and absolute correct ones? You know, he would make comments about how all men were this way, the same way that he was in thinking. And I'm like, I have so many male friends that don't think like you, so no, not all men are like that. You know, those kinds of experiences, and I was like, yeah, it takes so much more. You know, I think you're more likable if you aren't a know-it-all anyway, right? And if you're willing to be open to being wrong about things, because there've been so many times that in my life that I've had opinions that have turned out to be wrong, and I'm like, oh, okay, I will change my mind about that. Like I used to have,
that just shows growth. Yeah, that's great.
I used to have much worse opinions of poor people and people who lived in poverty, because I grew up middle class, and you know, I didn't have that kind of lifestyle growing up. But when you know, one of my good online friends grew up in poverty, and she talked about all of her harsh realities in a writing competition. This is how I met her, and through reading her experiences, helped me come to the realization that I was wrong about the reality of poverty and how hard it is to get out of it when you know that's what you're living in. So I just wish more people would be open to those kinds of ideas of listening to other people's experiences. I mean, yes, I know I blighted on earlier about like it's your responsibility to change your perspective and change your attitude about things. But there are, you know, sometimes there are economic circumstances that prevent you from making some changes. But attitude is, you know, that's different.
Oh yeah, I grew up that way too. Very, you know, look down. Oh, you must be that way because that's how you chose to be, right? And so with the kids today, I took them through a picture, three pictures, right? You know, there's a group of people. I say, you know, we think of ourselves like that. I taught them the word phenotype. You know, I use the word phenotype in stand-up. Most people are like, what's that mean? So it means what you look like on the outside. And I'm like, well, we think that's us, but that's not really us. And then I had a picture of some skeletons playing cards like Halloween. Oh, we see the skeletons dancing. Oh, that's us when we're dead, right? But that's not us at all. That's just the structural stuff. And I showed him a picture of a nervous system. I was like, that's you. And we kind of all look the same, right? You know, from a nervous system perspective. And this is where I brought up the example of tribes that don't have numbers in their language. And so they can't count beyond 4, which is really interesting. And so as human, we can't count beyond 4 unless you're taught. But crows can count to 4. I think dogs can count to 4. Monkeys can count to 4. But we think that being able to have numeracy is something that's kind of innate with us, and it's not. And when you realize, like, oh, you know, 150 years ago, we'd say all those, you know, uncivilized savages can't count to 4. Now we know the biology is exactly the same. It tells us about us. Like, unless somebody taught us, we're not going to know. And it was kind of funny to see their faces. Like, what do you mean we can only count to 4? And you know, here the test they did. So people would interact with the tribes, and then they show number, you know, like 8 things, and put them in a basket and tell me when the basket's empty. And that's how they know. And it's really fascinating to see, like, how much we've depended upon the people that came before us to figure out, like, the stuff that's here. So the people are like, oh, I made it on my own. You didn't on your own. You added a little tiny speck on top of all this other stuff that everybody did to help you out. And so yeah, this whole
if you have a business that requires that you send products to people, you rely on roads, you rely on transportation, you rely on
infrastructure,
to pay for those things, like
computer,
nobody makes it on their own. Nobody is a self-made person.
No, I know. And we just do not appreciate how tied in with each other we are, no matter what. So I think, again, I think the youth are going to fix the problems that we've created or propagated from the previous generation. Because
I hope so. There are some people in the up and coming generations that are feeling disappointed about their entitlements not coming through, that they feel like they should be owed, that things might get worse before they get better, but you know, we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think that those are the exception and not the rule. So they're just very vocal about it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When you don't feel like you're being treated fairly, you tend to be vocal.
That's true.
And when you're rich and you're griping that you're not treated fairly,
oh my God.
This is what drives me nuts. And I'm on my bike and pedestrian committee for my city. And the number of cars that complain, you know, automobile drivers, like, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm like, no, you are traffic.
Fair.
you know, oh, you cyclists ride side by side, but you're driving along in a car and you have your side by side anyway. I mean, come on, there's just the you know, and this is where, so people talk about AI. Oh, AI is gonna you know, pick out who you are. But I think AI would be great if we just blinded things, right? The whatever socioeconomics or sex that you are, and you just made people purple little humanoids. I think it would be much more clarifying as to where some of the problems in society lie, by stripping out some of the details, because details mess with our mind. Yes, and feed into our biases. Yeah, so you blind it, you get a better answer. And if it's not blinded, it's not science, because the human brain sucks. When we remove the human brain from the measurement process, we've gotten better at making scientific data. And anytime you can remove a human brain, you do so, because it gives you a better answer. Yes.
But if we do follow that mantra, won't we have less variables and less variety to work with? Isn't that kind of like variety is the spice of life? We're all very uniform.
So take a look at soccer. or football or whatever sport you want to talk about today, and you
Sure.
compare it with the athleticism and the creativity of the competitors like 50 years ago.
Big difference.
Big difference. Huge improvements. And the analogy I have is there's a cooperative foundation where all these players are trained, right, to think about the thing the same way, and to, when you're in this position, or where the open space on the field is, or they're just much more savvy earlier on in life about how to play together on a team. And then on that foundation of cooperativity, you can layer upon that very high quality competitiveness. But it's not destructive competitiveness. It's very entertaining competitiveness. And it's fun. We love it. You can dress up and go to the game and all this stuff. But having a foundation of cooperativity gives you a better foundation and gives you more choice selection on top. But it has to be fair and equally applied to everybody. And that's where we're terrible at that. We're terrible at writing laws or rules that apply equally to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Well, why is it tricky?
Well, yeah, I mean, because innately, as much as we like to think we're all the same tribe, we all are inherently different.
We are, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that are the same. There's a lot of things that are different. And so like American football. I say American football is dance. And like the kids in school will be like, oh, it's not dance, but it is. You go to football rehearsal and you practice your moves, and like my feet go here, my body goes here, my hands are supposed to be going here, I'm supposed to be looking this way. And yet, if you say that to a kid in high school, it'd be like, oh, it's not rehearsal, it's practice. And there's some difference between these two words, right? And you don't have somebody that goes and runs a good route and comes back to the huddle and says, oh man, nailed that routine. But they did. They ran a good route in performing a good routine. It's just that some of the details are different, but it's exactly the same. It's entertainment, and it's repeatable movements for entertainment purposes. And so I think it's clarifying to think what's similar. And then when the similarities can be agreed upon, then the differences, you can celebrate the differences better because you're not worried about the similarities being, taken advantage of, I guess. I don't know. I think it's an interesting way to think.
Yeah, like there's this show called, I don't know whether you guys have heard of it, called So You Think You Can Dance. And it's usually they pair up a celebrity with a professional dancer. They rehearse, they compete against one another. And now everyone has consistently said, like, if you're an athletic celebrity, you come from a sporting background, they usually tend to excel because they're so used to their bodies, whatever it is. They've had rugby players, tennis players, professional wrestlers, and you see them in rehearsal, and they're just oddly like once they can just turn it off, they're naturals. It's amazing.
It is, and it's a lot of plus they're super athletic, right? They're not like the NARPs. I'm a NARP, non-athletic regular person.
Me too.
Yarp.
Yeah. I learned it from my kids. They were both D1 athletes here in the States.
Oh, wow.
It was cool to see them go through that experience and be around kids that really worked hard at excelling at these sports that really they were not going to participate a whole lot in after they graduated college. But the training and the dedication, and that's where I think, it doesn't really matter what you're in when you're growing up, whether it's a sport, like we have all the theater kids all there or whatever.
Yeah.
But sport, theater, music, art, just do something that you love to do, and you'll learn things about yourself because you're going to hit hurdles where it's hard to get to the next level, or it's hard to make a decision, or it's hard, so it gives you, a non-lethal way to really test your limits, which is a good thing to do. But I think details mess with our brains, and if we just took a look at everybody as purple people, I think in many ways it'd be much more clarifying.
Yeah.
Like where the real asymmetry is, and talk about this is Black History Month in the United States. I don't know if we're calling that anymore or whatever.
We are. I don't give a shit what Google Calendar. I don't give a shit what Google Calendar is.
Yeah, I know.
Taken off. It's like,
through the current political regime, the wannabe dictator, Mr. Felon President may not like it. I don't really care because he is president. So there's a author who writes about sort of like the exodus of Black people from the Southeast, like right after the Civil War, to different areas of the United States. And she wrote a second book on caste. So she compared the social situation in the United States with the caste system in India. And the main message in both of her books, and her name's Isabel Wilkerson, is when you systematically disadvantage a segment of your population, it makes it worse for everybody. And I'm like, that is exactly right. And it doesn't matter who's getting disadvantaged. It just has to be a segment that is being disadvantaged. And it screws it up for everybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are we so self-destructive? We're like teenagers in many ways. I don't think we need to get smarter. I just think we need to grow up as a society. It's time to quit acting like a bunch of little bratty teenagers and act like adults and make some adult decisions about how we make the society and how inclusive we are, and how our education system sucks because kids come out and they don't know how things work, physical things, right? Oh my gosh, just learn how to build something, learn how to put plumbing in, learn how electricity works, learn how a car works, work with your hands, because those things are tied to physics and you can't scam physics. You cannot, no matter how much you want, cheat gravity.
Right, no, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Like I've been blessed to have been have education, Asia, Europe, and the United States, and even up till recently, like my car mechanic had a go at me because he just they all burst out laughing. They're like, "Bro, do you even know how to change a tire?" And I was like, "I don't." And they just all of them burst out laughing. It was they all looked at each other, and went, "Ah!"
Wow.
But they're all good. But they're good friends. And they're like, "Listen, yeah." So we've known each other for a long time, and they were like, "Tell you what, whenever you're free, give us a call beforehand. Well, if the garage is free, you'll be an unpaid intern, and we'll teach you." And I was like, "Cool." But I mean, if it wasn't for them, I don't know how to do anything.
Wow.
Dude, I don't even fill up my own tires.
Yeah, you don't think about that,
I've had,
Well, so, but since you were in a different education system, and Dominica, did you ever experience the U.S. education system as it was, or was it
very, very briefly? Okay, and by that I mean because obviously I grew up in Australia, so I went to school there. But my family is all from the United States, so there was, I think it was maybe when I was 11, might have been that trip when so I had like three different family trips to the United States when I was, this is middle class in the 90s. Okay. 3 separate family trips to the United States when I was a kid. So it was when I was 7, turned 8 here, when I was 11, and when I was 14. So I think it was when I was 11 I came out, and I have an aunt who her family owns a ranch in Wyoming, and so they're kind of like middle of nowhere kind of area. But we were visiting them when they were in school. Like, she had 2 daughters, so I had, 2 female cousins, and one of them was the same age as me, and so I got to go to school with her a couple of, I don't know, maybe a week or something, just for the fun of it. Bring your Australian cousin to school week,
Cool.
But I don't remember really anything about what we
Okay.
learned or anything like that. So my experience with the US education system is through my kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my perception is that some of the other countries' education systems are much better than ours.
Oh yeah, no,
So are
absolutely.
they
That is
good?
my perception without having been through the US education system, just based on how stupid so many Americans are. Sorry, I don't care if people take offense to that, because
No,
it's
it's
true.
true,
Um,
and we're terrible at teaching as well.
But
We are terrible at it.
my thing is, like, my big thing is, one of the things I learned in history, in, I think it was 11th grade, we learned about Nazi Germany in school, and my biggest takeaway from it was learning about propaganda. But I feel like
Correct.
even when people are taught about propaganda, they're not able to identify it when it's staring them in their face. Like, there's so much propaganda in America, and so many people just don't see it as propaganda at
No,
all.
No.
And, like, can you not see the parallels between this and that? Like, so it's, you can teach it, but you need to also teach that critical thinking side of things. And I do feel like that was something that was taught in school in Australia. I don't know how well that's taught in the US. And I think that it varies from state to state, and, like, even county to county, right? Because they have their, their own ideas about, what should be taught and what shouldn't be taught. And then there's this whole period where teaching the arts was, that's a bad waste of money, so let's focus on the sciences and that sort of thing. But the creative stuff that you learn in school is where a lot of that critical thinking is taught. And so you need to have both sides of it in the education system. So yeah, that's my soapbox.
well, but even teaching science is like, from a professional, like, I remember the last time I predicted the outcome of an experiment, and it was 10 years after my PhD. It was I think it's 2003, and I had run through a set of experiments, did all the things, checked all the boxes. I knew exactly how this was going to turn out, and I was completely wrong. I got it wrong, and I'm like, oh my goodness, if I'm thinking about this wrong, what else am I thinking about incorrectly? And I look back and I'm like, I was not taught enough to figure out, like, oh, this is something that could happen. And I think our imagination's actually really poor, because I think we recycle the same 3 movies, right?
Yeah.
All right. You remember the scene in 21 Jump Street with Nick Offerman, where he's sitting in the office? The guys at the top are, completely devoid of ideas and not, completely devoid of creativity or out of ideas, and they just recycle shit from the past and expect us all not to notice. This is yes. And we just do the same over and over again. And so it doesn't cause you to think things differently. And the teacher I was with today, and this is, we talked about brains, and, your dog or cat has a brain. And if you try to explain to them, like, how the dog or cat food is made in a factory, the animals, it's beyond their capacity to think, right? There's no way that dog or cat is ever going to understand how a factory works. Which means that if we have a brain, you should automatically be asking what's beyond our capacity to think. And I saw the teacher's face, and she's like, "Whoa, never thought that before." And I've used this before on one of my colleagues, and boy, did it make him uncomfortable. He did not like that. I guess he was under the impression that he was unrestrained in some way. But it was pretty funny. And it is a very uncomfortable thought. Like, are there things that are beyond my capacity to think?
And we restrain ourselves all the time.
We do. We do. We
because
have much more fun unrestrained.
by our thoughts of like, oh no, that's not possible. I can't think that, or I can't behave that way. Or if you have a very poor self-esteem, so your thoughts are going to be like, well, I can't do that because I'm just not good enough. But if you just change the way that you think and push yourself, then it turns out you are actually capable of the thing.
You are. I'll tell you, there's a significant number of scientists I work with who really suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, somebody's going to figure out I'm faking it. And I'm like, guess what? I am too.
Everyone is. Come on, everyone is.
We're just making this up as we go along because nobody's ever done this before. This is really where the fun begins, not just.
I mean, in terms of science, isn't that the point of a hypothesis? It's just that's what it is.
It is, but we hate to be wrong. And if you're not wrong, and if you don't want to be wrong, go be an engineer, build a bridge. You get double checked all the time for that. But figuring out how something new works, you're going to be wrong all the time. So it is fun. You have to be comfortable. You have to learn how to be comfortable with that. And that's what's, I guess, emotionally very difficult.
Oh yeah. The being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. Right? That's the saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely been leaning into more of that. So I've been trying to over the last year or so.
Good.
So did either of you grow up religious?
Oh yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
Catholic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm obviously not now.
No, I figured that.
Yeah.
No, and I grew up religious, and so now people ask me like, "Oh, are you an atheist?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's worse than that. I don't think you have a soul." And it was like,
I think like that's the thing. From my understanding, if people say atheism is fine, but when you say, "Oh, I'm agnostic, I don't believe in anything," their minds explode because, isn't it?
It's the other way around. An atheist doesn't believe in anything. Agnostic doesn't know if there is something, but
they don't know what it is.
Believes that there's a possibility that there could be something, but there also could not be something. Like they don't have that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. But then if that's the case, people say, "Oh, like I don't believe in anything." They're just like, well, then it goes down to the ancient question: why are we here?
Well, but that's us. That's meaning, and maybe we're here to kind of figure out, like, maybe this is a big escape room, and we have to figure out how to get out of it.
That's how Elon Musk is treating it. Let's.
Oh God.
Yeah. So talk about the tech bros.
Please, yeah. Why not? It's topical.
You go back to the Greeks, and one of the Greeks figured out how round the Earth was and what the circumference of the Earth was. It's really cool. It was super basic technology, but they thought, we have chariots, and that's what they relate to. So therefore, a chariot must be pulling the sun across the sky, right?
Yeah.
And to me, like the football and the dance are the same thing. Well, the current thinking of, we're in a simulation because we have computers is exactly the same thought. It just the details are different, but it's the same thought. We've related something that's new in our environment to this must be how the universe works.
Oh man, it feels like that sometimes though. It's like, what universe have I stepped into?
It is really, really funny. And just admit you don't know, and we don't know how all this works. Oh my goodness. But that's the cool thing, because, as far as we know, once you're gone, you're gone. Maybe you're not. Maybe you get recycled. Who knows? We have no data for that. So, instead of arguing over imaginary things, let's kind of figure out, like, how does that work? How does this fit in together?
How can we test this?
How can we get along better? How can we feed everybody when we make enough food, but we haven't fed everybody yet? I mean, come on, let's get some practicality in here too, where we can take care of each other, because who knows where the next brain's going to come from that's going to unlock, the next thing. They could be in the middle of Africa, could be up in the Arctic somewhere. Who knows?
Oh yeah, no, I keep seeing like, various stories shared on social media about amazing technological advances that have come out of like, Africa and like the Philippines and all places, just because, like solar panels that are clear windows, I mean, that's amazing.
That
Can
is.
we have that in all of our houses? That's going to be so much better. But capitalism. Yeah, my dad has popped in and left us a chat message, so I'm just going to pull his comment up here. He says, I like looking at individual humans as going through a journey, picking up puzzle pieces as they go. They are naive but have some inbuilt responses. DNA. Everyone's experiences are unique to them. More, I guess my dad's going to add another comment after this, because there's a extra.
So we did this today. There's some test strips called PTC test strips. So they taste bitter to some people, and other people don't taste them at all.
Oh, interesting.
Which is really interesting. That's one of the reasons I did it with the kids. It's like, you could be having the same experience as your friend, but your perception of that experience is very different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just because you were there and you experienced the same thing doesn't mean you experienced the same thing. And the DNA thing, that's just a repository of information. The things that really make biology run is the proteins, and that is what causes you to be able to experience the world and acquire information and put it into your nervous system. And so I had two super tasters in my one in one class and one in the other. They just hated it. They put it in the and other kids are like, I don't taste anything. And for me, I don't taste anything either. It's just kind of funny that this one little molecule people have different experiences. So it is. And this is something we didn't know 50 years ago.
Yeah.
We're learning new things every day, aren't we?
All the time. It's so cool.
It's cool.
I really love those kinds of experiments where you get to see the different perspectives and, full on like you can't object to it kind of thing. I
mean, science is science. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's obviously a biological thing. I think more because I'm interested in psychology, so I think a lot about the psychological perspective of people's mindsets of and how they can go through have an experience together and experience it very differently based on their personal mindsets and backgrounds and all of that kind of thing. And that's why I do try to be more aware of people's backgrounds and differences, whether it's racial differences, sexual orientation, cultural experiences, like all of that stuff, because those experiences, those identities, those backgrounds inform their perspective. And unless you are willing to listen to those experiences that people are having from their perspectives, how can you even begin to comprehend what they're actually going through? You can't.
No.
But it seems like people just want to be like, well, my experience is like this, so everybody else must experience it the same way.
Again, main character syndrome. Yeah.
Main character syndrome. I like that phrase.
Yeah. I am the alpha and the omega. Thus.
I am the all important. Everybody thinks like me. Yeah. All right. My dad's got the follow up to his.
We got him chatting here.
Yeah.
Perception is limited.
Oh yeah.
And we start off thinking everything surrounds us. That causes us to be egocentric. I am at the center of things. This ego is a false perception that we work hard to maintain. I think this is making me think about, a couple of other streams that I've done, and what some of the questions that have come up have been along the lines of, what was your first impression of me, or that kind of thing. Like, how do you see me, because how other people see you is not how you see yourself. And it's very interesting to ask those. You have to be very brave to ask those kinds of questions. And be willing to take on. I mean, sometimes they're positive experiences, but if you really want to be able to grow as a person, you need to be open to the not so pretty side that you might be presenting if you want to make some changes about yourself. But yeah, I've like, just for example, like I have always not so much nowadays, but back in the past I was much more introverted, socially awkward and that sort of thing. But what came up, I think, Sharad, you were one of the people who were talking about this. It was like, I seemed very outgoing and interested, and like, really, that's not how I saw myself at all back then. So it's very interesting to kind of get those different perspectives about how the people see you. I think that's why they give one of the things that they give you advice to do when you're like, had a job loss and you need to rewrite a new resume because it's been a while. Ask other people what they see your strengths are, because you might not be able to see them yourself.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to both strengths and weaknesses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like one thing I remember learning in school. So when I was 16 to 18, I was really into Greek mythology and history. It just fascinated me. It still does to this day. And I remember like learning about the ego, especially with in terms of learning about Aristotle and how it's meant to be about learning about knowing yourself. That was the initial principle behind it. So having an ego wasn't like, oh, I'm the best person in the world. It's just I am very aware. So it's interesting looking at the context and the history behind it. It's mind blowing, actually.
Yeah. My dad has another comment about ego.
Here
we go. This ego not being fully aware relates to fear and spends a lot of energy defending its perspectives. More to explain. Oh, I guess my dad's got more stuff to say.
Interesting.
My dad's like me and very verbose in his thinking and writing. That's why back the very first stream I did of this show, I streamed it to Facebook as well, and my dad was watching on Facebook and left a much longer comment than what you can do on YouTube. It did not fit on the screen. I had to read it from the chat window. Yeah, I'm very, very verbose. That's why my memoir is currently sitting at 235,000 words.
Sharad's only have 500 more to go.
I'm on page 104 out of 687, so a bit more to go.
You better hurry up, or she might add a few hundred more.
Yeah, God, don't. Oh.
Well, look, at the moment, it's up to as of last week is what I have written it up to, and I don't know that there's much more that I'm going to have to add, but I do have space to add something in an epilogue.
Okay.
And from an editing perspective, more is better than less,
because then you can cut out the stuff.
You've got more to cut out.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. But no, genuinely the last thing that happened in my memoir was as of last week. I finished writing it, this latest version of it on Saturday, this past Saturday, and resent it out to the people that had copies of it, because there were several months that I added to the memoir from what it was previously that I'd sent to people. Yeah, because more stuff happened that was relevant, and I'm like, okay, I have more stuff going on. Okay, there we go.
That's usually how it works. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no. As of the thing that I did last week, to kind of close things out, I feel I'm more at peace with the end of the story now, and ready to move on with the next stage of my life. I hope I'm there.
Well, you know what they say, like acceptance is pretty much the biggest game changer anyone can make. So it's great.
No, I'll just I could have talked about this last week on last week's stream, but I didn't, because it wasn't I don't know, it wasn't relevant to our conversation last week, but since that's coming up now, I guess I'll talk about it. So my memoir is primarily about my relationship with my Malaysian ex Lee, and I've come through all of like this self-awareness, self-reflection, thinking about a lot of things, and there was like I reached a point of feeling like there was just a couple of other things that I had not felt like I'd been able to express. And I did want to like properly apologize to him for the things that I felt like I understood differently now than I did back then. And I ended up sending him another message just to kind of close that out, to just let him know that I wanted to apologize. If he ever gets to a place that he wants to receive it, he may not want to receive that. But at least I was able to say my piece, and now I can move on. I was actually surprised that it only took him between 2 and 3 days to read the message. So I'm like, now I'm at peace, and now I can move on. That was
Good.
All I needed. Like, I didn't need to give him the apology itself. I just needed him to know that I wanted to, right? And if he needs it, then he knows he can ask for it. If he doesn't, it's fine. I'm at peace with that now.
Good.
Yeah. So now everyone knows how the memoir ends. But everyone
but still buy it when it comes out.
Dominica,
So, yeah.
the story is what matters, right? Like the journey of it. It
It's
doesn't.
the journey, yeah.
I start off the memoir saying that it doesn't end well, as in like we don't end up together. But the journey is what matters, and the growth that I went through along the way. It's just how impactful that relationship was on me and who I am today. So much of who I am as a person.
Good.
Well,
my therapist is like, so many people could learn so much from you through your writing. And I'm like, yes, and that's why I should share my story. I hope people read it. They won't if it's an epic 700-page book.
now you got 600 pages.
Yeah.
Now what?
Now Sharon's got 600 pages to go.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to reading it.
I don't have a deadline for it, okay? So yeah, I'm just like, take your time, prioritize other things that are, you're actually paid for, please.
No worries.
Like I've said to him, like, I will pay you for helping me edit this, because I genuinely, like, it's a lot of work to read that many pages and actually give me feedback, and that's his job. That's what Sharad does for a living, right? He deserves to be paid for that work, and so I will pay him when he lets me pay him.
No, like I've told Dominica, like, well, if and when I am intending on coming back to the US, and if I'm ever in her part of the woods, I'll come and collect. So then we'll be fine.
Collect how?
I don't know if you have a spare kidney, which I was thinking about. That might come in handy. We'll see. Maybe
I know you have expressed wanting a green card. Is that what you're expecting here?
Well, of course, that bridge when we come to it. Yeah, sure. Why not? Like, yeah, if I do come back, and God forbid, the Lord God Trump is still in positions of power, I might have to be like, hey, can we like?
Well, I do have a couple of spare bedrooms, so that is
Thank you.
If that is an alternative way of payment, free accommodation for a while.
Yeah, why not? That might save me quite a bit. Yeah, because we all know how expensive hotels are. So yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, no, and rent here is ridiculous. And you've said that San Francisco is where you're looking at coming to. So yeah, rent is exorbitant. Like, I could rent out a room in my place for $1,000 a month. I don't, because I don't want to have other people in my house anymore. Like, I have, though, in the past, rented out rooms in my house for that much, and it's a nice source of income. But if you don't tidy very often. It's not really a state of, or my house is not really a state or a condition that's nice to share with other people. Ed,
Whose
is that
cat is
your
that?
cat?
Is that your cat? Is that your cat, Ed?
So
Let's have a
loud.
look.
Well, she's not even in the room with me. I closed the door. I don't.
Oh
let
my
her
goodness.
Oh,
so
bless.
she's-
What's her name?
apparently, my wife went to bed, so now she's bored, wants to come in.
Mm.
Oh.
You know, normally she'll come in and she'll launch herself and land behind on my chair behind my head.
I'll
So
do
when
that.
Let her in. Let her in. Yeah, let her in.
when I'm talking, okay.
Look, our other usual guest, Mike, has a couple of cats who make appearances sometimes.
Wow.
So
Oh,
All right,
cutie.
okay, she does.
what? Your bookshelf isn't real? No, I knew that before.
We
It's
did
just
that
funny when you
before,
actually.
Why didn't I normally blur the background and I had the door closed. I do have a MAGA hat hanging on my door, but I use it. I
Oh,
do
that's hilarious.
I do a stand-up bit in Oakland with
Oh.
a MAGA hat on and a Jesus shirt with Jesus riding a dinosaur.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Takes
You must have so many stories about that.
It takes a little bravery to get up in front of that crowd because this is not a popular figure.
Oh.
And partly because I came from that tribe, and they're not all nuts. You know,
they just got sucked into the cult.
They're afraid. They're just afraid.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know what to do to fix it, because they'd be better off if they weren't afraid, but they're just terrified. Like,
well,
my wife's Mexican. I was visiting my parents, and they are snowbirds. They'll come down from Ohio to Arizona and spend 3 months to skate the snow, and they're in south of Tucson, so not that far away from the Mexican border. And I always joke with them, "Hey, did you bring your passport?" And they're like, "Oh, we're not going over to Mexico." You know? I'm like, come on, this is not so bad. And like, we'll go down. Good grief, I go down and get dental work done down there because it's like 20% of the price, and it's the same.
Wow.
They have the same technology. They have the same clinical chemistry analyzers. I would take my pets down when I lived in San Diego, and having done this, sometimes English isn't so good, but just show me the chart. I know what's going on, and it's really interesting to go down, and they're just nice people. And so when I hear this crisis on the border, and I go down, and everybody's lined up in a nice line to get across the border and have their stuff checked. I'm like, this is not a crisis. It's just imaginary.
No,
they're just imaginary. I think that's kind of like the theme that we've hit on tonight.
No, exactly. It comes down to needing to learn critical thinking and question. They're very good about question everything that the libs say, right? They're all wrong. Like, question their motivations, but they're not able to self-reflect on their own stuff as well.
It's pathologic in many ways. Do you know who Thomas Sowell is? He's an economist. So a lot of these quotes, and he's a big he's one of the guys that's really followed on the conservative side. But a lot of the stuff he says is really just kind of, true. But if you read it, it's a lot about looking in the mirror and thinking, am I the problem? Like, I think, Sharad, you said it earlier. The only person you can change is yourself, right? I mean, that is ultimately the only person you can change. You can't enforce a change on anybody else. They just don't get it. It's so funny to watch. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is. And this was why I think maybe we're in a test. And,
simulation,
and we're failing. Like, how emotionally nuts can we make a primate and still have it kind of function? I don't know.
It's also that is it the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like the stupider you are, the smarter the more you think you know,
Think
but
you
the more
are,
you
yeah.
know, the less you know that you don't know. And so because when you're hyper aware of how much you don't know, then you are more critical of the thoughts and able to think more critically about the world. But when you don't know how much you don't know, then it's like, you know.
And testing for that is hard. That is very
Yeah.
difficult to do. And there's some questions like there's one where you ask somebody to draw a bicycle. Like, you know both know what a bike is, but can you draw one? And you can, there are people that just draw things that are physically incorrect. And I don't know, have you guys heard of a cargo cult at all?
No.
Oh, okay. So
Educate us.
this is again a group of uncivilized savages in the South Pacific Island in World War II, right? No, humans just like us, just without the education. And the GIs came in World War II as they were heading toward, pushing Japanese imperialism back to Japan.
Oh, I think I might have heard about this, but please go on for our audience, Sharad.
The GIs promptly got the islanders addicted to alcohol and nicotine because those are two of the 4 drugs that we have used out throughout our history, the other 2 being opioids and caffeine. And then the war ends and all the stuff goes away. And so they like their stuff. So they build a runway and they would put coconuts on their head and they would go out and wave their arms to try to get the planes to come back. And again, like the anumeric tribes, this shows us how we normally think when we don't know how things work. And I think our entire society is this. We're out there saying magic words, waving our arms around, hoping something good happens without any clues to really how to get it to come to effect. Just because we don't know how things work.
Yeah. But
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
This is why I feel like, so one of the issues I have with the education system in the United States is not just the education system, but like the whole way everything works. Like it's so hard to make enough money in order to travel outside the country. When people do travel, it's usually within the United States because it's so big, so they can see a lot of different things anyway. But when you're stuck within your own country, you're not able to experience cultures outside of your country. And that's really where you get exposed to more of the world to help you see that actually not everyone thinks the way that you do. That's why there's the stuff that goes around online sometimes talking about how universities aren't and colleges aren't telling these students to become liberal or whatever. They're not teaching them in that particular way. They just become that as a result of being exposed to a lot more different people and ways of thinking. Yeah. So it's not what's being taught in the university itself so much as it is the people that they're exposed to and, learning alongside with, because, for example, there are a lot of international students that come to universities to study in the United States. I know that's a big, Sharad, and that was a big thing for Malaysian. A lot of Malaysians travel to Australia, United States, or the UK to go to university rather than going to university in Malaysia. And so there's a lot of countries that do that sort of thing. It's very common. And so that helps people within the United States to be exposed to those other cultures as well, because they'll be happy to share their cultures, and then they'll go back or not if they're able to secure work here. But it just depends. But yeah,
it shows them that there's more than one way to actually have a functional society.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you're like, oh, there's more than one way to do it.
Okay. And so one of the things that's happening right now, that one of the political things that I can actually get on board with, that is being promoted within Trump and Elon, and you're probably going to be like, what the, how could you possibly?
No,
I will tell you.
Let's hear it. Let's hear
is
it.
getting rid of the penny.
Okay.
I'm
That's good.
fully in support of that. I can understand, like, especially like they've said that it costs 3 cents to make a new penny. So like it's more expensive to make one than what it's actually worth.
Fair,
right?
Fair.
But I remember using pennies and, like, 1 cent and 2 cent coins in Australia when I was growing up. They got rid of them in the early 90s in Australia. So I have been used to rounding up or down to the nearest 5 cents since the early 90s, right? So like that's just, it makes sense to me. Like, Getty. So it was like, what is the big deal? Like, it's so annoying to have like all these pennies in your wallet, like, because people just don't even use them properly, and then just rack up the
I
coins.
just leave them at the store, in the little tray.
Yeah.
Just take them. And this is where the whole efficiency thing is. I think we should kind of be a little bit less efficient, because I'm a responsible adult. I pay my bills and stuff, and I wouldn't even mind, like rounding up to the next $10 on some of my bills, not for the shareholders value themselves, but for people who are having trouble paying their bills. I would gladly, like, here's a little bit, and that's kind of biblical if you're grew up that way. Like, you leave some stuff in the field so that people can come along behind and have something to eat. And I'll tell you something, I'm actually in favor of, for RFK Jr. of all things, is getting rid of the direct consumer advertising for pharmaceuticals.
Oh yeah.
I would love to see
that's a
go away.
thing that seems to be a purely American thing. You can't advertise that stuff in Australia. So like, it's so bizarre. Like, having come from another country and then going here and just seeing ads, it's like, why are you advertising this to me? But like, and if they then stop spending money on pharmaceutical ads, that money would be better spent on lowering prices or medical research. Like, there's so many better ways to spend that money than targeting and trying to get people to use it. Like, that's not what the medical industry is meant to be for.
No, I know. I really wish. I mean, I love what I do, but it is very inefficient, and it's really run by business people and lawyers, and accountants. And these guys have not a clue as to any of that, what I do. And it should be for society, right? I mean, the story of the kids getting cured from insulin. I had 40% of my kids today stand up. I said, okay, 200 years ago, you'd all be dead. Just pretend, killing kids in 5th grade when you visit their class does not tend to be very popular. We had to pretend. But insulin was one of those things where that was a death sentence within a year. If you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, it was just so bad. And, some Frederick Banting ground up some pig pancreas and injected it in the kids, and kind of a miracle cure, because they knew that's where the organ came from. Didn't even know it was insulin at the time. Pretty cool stuff. But when you're desperate as a parent, man, you'll do anything to save your child. And it's nice to be a parent and not have 4 to get 2. You can have 2 and keep 2. So
yeah.
A big freaking improvement over what the parents went through 100 years ago. Yes.
No, absolutely. So this is why, like, there are people who think that we have such divergent thinking that we cannot agree on anything. But here we've like given a couple of examples where, we do have similarities of things in common. I was going to go back to the the
Freedom. Let's talk about freedom.
Oh God! Well,
Let's do it.
people have such a different perspective on freedom. Like people define that word differently,
So
right?
how would you
It seems
define
like that.
How would you define it? Yeah.
How would I define it? Freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom to live my life the way that I want to, as long as I'm not infringing on another person's rights. That to me is freedom.
Okay.
So no murder, no theft.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, trying not to hurt other people, you know, as much as you're able to do so. And yeah, but like there are a lot of different freedoms. Like it's hard to have economic freedom because, you know, especially in today's society where they talk about the top, you know, a couple of people, you know, what the top 7 billionaires or something own more wealth than the lowest 50% of the United States or something like that. Like that, some statistics like that. It's like how is that fair? So it would be nice to have economic freedom, but I don't know. You know, I had somebody comment like on one of my TikToks about this is my like Elon joke one. Someone was like, how do you expect people to want to you know, achieve great heights if they don't have if they taxed so much, right? If they make so much money. It was like there are a lot of different reasons that people might be motivated to do something that is not money based, like, you know, wanting to make the world a better place, or, you know, wanting the world to be healthy, or, you know, not have sickness, and caring about their fellow humans. A lot of
And it's not just that. Yet people have to remember that when the ultra wealthy do get taxed, they're still ultra wealthy.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean. So I don't understand that at all.
I could maybe understand it if they were doing something good with their excess wealth, like, you know, philanthropy stuff. So I have less of an issue with the ones that do put their, you know, money back into you know, life-saving causes and things.
Like Bill Gates is like a massive example.
For example, yeah. And but like what's Elon doing? Like no, like you know, supposedly his motivation is he wants to see the human race
Become president.
to go off planet. But can we like save our planet first before, you know, destroying it and needing another planet to go to? Like, let's prioritize living here first. Yeah, that's so.
Make South Africa white again.
Yeah.
Okay,
Remember, it was an enthusiastic wave. It wasn't a Sieg Heil. Remember that.
That's what
I am very, very grateful that okay, in I think it was 12th grade history class, we got to my class had the option of voting for one of the classes that we took, like what historical, like geographic region and time period.
Oh, that's cool.
And
oh wow, cool.
And my class voted for South Africa, and I got to learn about apartheid South Africa in school.
Wow.
There's no way I would have known who Nelson Mandela was without that class. Absolutely none. And so, you know, when I went to South Africa and arrived on the day that Nelson Mandela passed away.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
I'm so glad that I knew who he was. So glad that I knew who he was, so I could really be there and experience the grief that everyone was experiencing in the streets. It was such a marvel to be there in that time. Like, obviously, I didn't have the same connection to him that these other people did, but one of the things about being autistic is that, or at least my slice of autism, is that my body it takes on other people's emotions, the emotions of the people around me. So like I was able to walk past City Hall in Cape Town is where I was at, and there were these a large group of people, all Black South Africans, and they were dancing and singing and all of this, and I was just so overwhelmed and like tears streaming down my face just walking past and through all of that, but just being able to be there and feel what that was like. I'm just like, so yeah, the thought of wanting to go back to it, I'm just like, no, how can you?
No,
I'm so
Nah.
it was not good. It was not good.
no.
And even with like Nazi Germany, there was a couple. There's a book that's 2 volumes. I guess it's like one of the best ones that are written. I read the first one like leading up to it, and the people in like Hitler's inner circle, you'd think, oh yeah, they're the ones that benefit the most. They were all terrified of him.
Oh yeah.
You know, this was not a happy place to be. This was miserable. It was miserable for everybody except Hitler.
I feel like, you know, I know we're getting a little bit political now, but
Ooh.
I feel like that's exactly what we're seeing with the Republican Congress members. Like they're terrified.
They're terrified of each other. Yeah.
They're saying things in whispers, you know, off the record and to their Democratic colleagues maybe, but they're not saying anything in public where they could be chastised for it and, you know,
ostracized from the tribe, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like you know, oh, you said the wrong thing. Oh,
no,
you
it's
like
the
wrong person.
Stick up.
And it's not just that. I mean, it's not just that. The fact is, either saying the wrong thing, but in this modern incarnation of the party, it's the one who can be the most vocal, who can be the most aggressive to, you know, to stand out. I mean, for example, I mean, like your Marjorie Taylor Greens and what's his name? The guy that looks like a Play-Doh, the pedophile. What's his name? Matt Gaetz, right? Yeah. So
yeah, fair.
No, it's mind-boggling. So, you know, if you, instead of using the word freedom, if you say we have increased our choice selection in our society, I think that's a better way. So, you know, they co-opt words that become very emotionally attached to.
Yeah.
Because if you don't like freedom, therefore you must, you know, want not freedom. And that's it. You can't explain like you're thinking about this incorrectly. You have to then be smarter than them and use different nomenclature to trick them into thinking properly.
Yeah.
But I think it starts with kids. You have to train the kids, like, you know, think about what it's like to be there. And there's a philosopher, John Rawls, from, you know, even like the 1970s, and he's like the question he had was, if you were the one designing a society, you should be willing to take any slot in that society randomly if you designed it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, think that way, not just what can I get for myself, because as far as we're concerned, you're here for like, you know, 80, 90 years, maybe 100, let's say 100, because it's easy math, randomly on a rock flying through space. And you're arguing over money. I mean, this just, how stupid does that sound?
No, this is why, like, I feel like one of the things that absolutely needs to be taught in school is empathy.
Yeah.
And so, like, my kids in the school, at least my son, because he's autistic, and I mean, both my kids are autistic, but my son was diagnosed earlier, and he, because of that, he got access to supports for special socio-emotional learning to help him understand empathy and stuff more. I mean, autistic people understand empathy, but in a different way than neurotypical people do. So yeah, so more of that, I think, like as you were saying before, about the supports of one demographic actually supports more people. If that sort of thing that is designed for, you know, helping autistic people was taught more broadly to all of the kids, then they would learn empathy for, you know, the kinds of experiences that other people have as well. You know, with autism, there's what's known as the double empathy problem. So we both experience, autistic people and neurotypical people experience empathy, but they experience it in different ways. And so when you're not able to, like, you just keep missing each other in the communication styles, that it makes it seem like the other side doesn't have empathy. And the way that the kind of the disability mindset is this, well, it's the problem is on the autistic people. They're the ones that need to change and learn the neurotypical way. But what reality is that you both need to learn and come together to see each other's perspectives in the middle. So yeah, more of that across the board would be so valuable. I think that's really the one thing that's missing the most. And again, taking arts out of education is one of the things that has probably reduced that empathy for other people, because arts is one of the things that teaches empathy and sharing the stories of other people, and getting to reflect and understand those things better. Yeah.
Huh.
I've given you both a lot to think about. This is one of the reasons why it's diversity is so important to me. Like, I love to hear other people's perspectives because it gives me such a different way of thinking. And I want to understand, like, as a writer as well, I maybe have talked about this before, but understanding people's motivations behind their actions, what has led them to behave the way that they do. I like to understand the intention behind things. And I think that's really what we need more of. And it's a lot harder now, especially since the election, where, liberals have been like, okay, I'm just going to cut everyone off because they made their choice and they ruined everyone else's life as a result. But the only way that they're going to learn is if I cut them off. And maybe that works for some people, ostracization, or is that how it's anyway?
We know what you mean.
I don't think I said that word properly, but you know what I was talking about.
All the words are made up anyway.
Ostracization. Anyway, but what really helps people be open to another perspective is feeling listened to first. And that's really hard to do. It's so hard to do.
It can be.
Yeah.
So
it's hard for a lot of people.
I'm going to disagree with you on the motivation part. I think, as a society, this is one of the things I think is wrong with our legal system here in the U.S. is that it really, the difference between murder and manslaughter is really intent. The person who's dead doesn't really matter to. They're dead, right? So I think your intentions are kind of irrelevant from a legal standpoint, and you should just be judged on your actions. And I think that would terrify most people because we're very willing to judge others on their actions, but we want the opportunity to claim intent for ourselves, and we trust our ability to implement our intent correctly. But again, that would make it more fair because you wouldn't have to mind read what somebody else was thinking. You just go on what they did. But I don't think that would ever get voted in, at least in our current.
Not yet.
It's kind of terrifying to do so. And
I don't know. I feel like I'm the opposite mindset. It was like, because I recognize that I make mistakes and I want to be forgiven for mine, I am more likely to forgive other people for their mistakes.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think we should be, hey, child, leave my place alone. And
not murder, obviously.
Yeah, murder, but that's where, what's the statistic for women who've been raped in our society? What's it, 1 out of 4? Oh my goodness, why can't we fix this problem? Right. And I joke about, my wife, and I'm like, I caught her because, I put, she's like a cat. I put food out and I keep putting food out and she keeps coming back, and I give her a nice predictable environment in which she can exist.
Nice.
And I make her laugh. And
Nice.
so,
you've hacked the system. Well done.
this is not the most romantic thing. I do tomorrow. But neither one of us are going to get each other anything. But that's just us, right? She's comfortable around me, I'm comfortable around her. We can be who we are. But that works for us. That's not going to work for everybody. Some people just really like the drama and the flowers and whatever. Like, nah, whatever. Yeah, but
that's a good segue to promote my next live stream for the
Go for it.
I'll just do just a quick segue. We'll come back to that. But on Monday nights, US time, Tuesday morning, Malaysia, Australia time. I think it's afternoon if you're in the eastern states of Australia. But we'll be doing a live stream discussing romantic comedies. So tune in for that if you'd like to hear our thoughts. I mean, Ed's not going to be joining us. It'll be Sharad and my other
romantic comedies. No,
yeah.
I do most of. Anyhow, yeah, that's what we need. We need a nice, predictable environment. I need to be able to walk down the street and know that you're not going to commit physical violence upon me. And that's, I think that's as simple as it gets, right? So no non-consensual touching.
Yes.
We can get behind that.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple because if you touch somebody or not. There's no.
Yeah.
And then we argue over words, and we can use different words for different things. But if somebody, I don't mind people saying stuff. I don't mind people saying really offensive stuff because then I know who the idiots are and I can avoid it.
Exactly.
Yeah. They tell you who they are, so perfect.
Just let them broadcast. Just go right ahead. You can say whatever you want. And if you're an idiot, I have the right to avoid you. Yes.
Very adult of you.
We need an adult society. This is not an adult society.
Yeah, we're definitely not an adult society. Yeah, for sure.
We can't balance a checkbook. We can't solve problems without violence, right? And by the way, because the females are the limiting factor in reproduction for our species. If there are males that don't behave properly, it's not much to just.
Yep.
There's some movies like that, right? The Girl and the Dragon Tattoo, right? I think we kind of need that. Yeah. Wouldn't mind that at all.
That's right.
I don't mind being held to that because that's not how I behave towards my fellow human beings. I want them to like hanging around and talking to me. Yes.
We have, according to both Restream and YouTube, 5 people are watching us right now.
Oh my goodness!
Oh wow!
I know.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you so much for tuning in, guys.
Awesome.
If you have any thoughts that you want to drop into the chat, feel free to do so. If you have any questions for us,
man.
Feel free to. I don't know how much longer you guys want to keep doing.
I'll go probably another 20 minutes.
Yeah, same.
All right, we'll go for another 20 minutes. So if you have any burning questions that you want to hit at our deep emotional vulnerabilities, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll see how much we can answer in the next 20 minutes. But my dad has a comment that's been sitting there for a while, so I'm gonna bring that up.
Yeah, please.
I think he's gone.
Sure.
No, he's probably one of the 5 people that are still watching.
Oh yeah.
So he says, our ego selves bump up against other egos' puzzle pieces. Fear takes over and there is clash. Listening and understanding is the best way for overcoming differences and getting out of fear. Oh, I have to go. He did say he had to go. I think
he's not one of the 5.
Yeah, he may not be, but he will come and watch the rest afterwards. So he'll appreciate that I brought it up. But yeah, that's touches on the stuff that we were talking about just before that as well. Anyway, like with listening and understanding and how important that is. So yeah, you guys have any additional thoughts that you want to touch on for ego and understanding, or I want to see if any of our viewers want to ask a question.
I do I do something like where does I don't think ego inherently is a negative thing. I think the ego of wanting to better ourselves is something that we should strive for. But in today's modern society, where is that line between I don't know, self-improvement and just that raw, emotional, childish, egotistical kind of like that green monster that we all have? How, like, in this day, where is the line?
That's a good question. It probably is different for everyone, right? Maybe. For me, I guess, I mean, you have to have some level of self-interest, because otherwise you'll become a people pleaser, and then you end up resenting other people because they're not doing anything for you and you're not expressing your needs.
Well, for example, bodybuilding. I mean, that's the definition of ego. Like, you are the peak of human existence. That's scientifically that's what it is. But I don't know. But then at the same point, though, when you have someone who is injecting yourself with performing enhancement drugs, you're going beyond to where the body can actually physically handle yourself. So from then on, you're no longer wanting to improve yourself. You're just going into like some dark facet of your ego, which normally shouldn't be going. So there is that balance, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah.
There is. And Pete, performance enhancing drugs are a really fascinating topic, because in some ways, they're, these are drugs that can help us in certain areas. And so, instead, so I'll tell you guys, I have a real problem with authority in any form. And, part of it's because the work I do is really anarchy. There's nobody in charge over where I live. And I can talk to scientists from anywhere around the world, and we have a very good conversation because we talk about the same things. And so with the PEDs, what would be nice to have is, let's say, the more the people that have retired from the peak performance in your mid 20s or like early 30s, or unless you're Aaron Rodgers, 41, you have you can look back and say, I wish I didn't do that. That was bad. I wish I'd have done more of that. That was good. And I think as an older generation, that's our responsibility to help the younger ones say, hey, don't do it this way because you're going to regret it later in life, right? Because you're never going to know that in your mid-20s trying to, compete against other people in that arena. And so you do need somebody that has a different perspective to say, yeah, you don't really want to be taking the anabolic steroids because they're going to really shrivel your balls up. This is one of the,
yes,
and if you're more violent. And
no, here's me with my improv voice. Yes, and there are some experiences.
Yes.
There are some experiences that I feel like can't be taught, but through that fashion, it's learned from my mistakes by me telling my story. But some people don't learn that way, and some people have to learn by doing the shittiness themselves.
But
and
be like, everybody.
Oh, that was a bad idea, and I should have listened to this other person.
Well, it just goes down to the old adage. Sometimes you just have to let people F up, pretty much.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. But then there's smaller and smaller proportions of people effing up along the way.
Yes.
Or you have, or you the thoughts in there and like, oh shoot, I should have listened to that guy. or gal, whoever gave you the advice. You know, and you don't have to discover the thought on your own. It was implanted in your brain by somebody else, and
That's true.
you realized it like, oh, okay.
It is. I agree with that. It is possible that you would not reach the right conclusion from your mistake if you didn't already have somebody tell you or suggest it beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think this kind of reminds me of something. I remember watching this a few years ago, and it really stuck with me. Are you two familiar with this TV show? Quite old TV show called Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Love that show. And I still remember this episode where the lead character goes back in time, and it's a different universe time thingamajiggy, and basically their version of Hitler is about to come to power, and he has a weapon, the main character, and he's like, all right, let me just pop this guy off real quick, and then I'll go into a different timeline. And his friend shows up, stops him, and goes, this world kind of needs this to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a moral dilemma. Like, you know what this guy's going to do. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting.
And yet, we have not learned from that time period the way that we should have.
As much as things change, things stay the same.
Yeah.
History repeats itself.
It does. You know, I've been fascinated, like, to go back. I mean, the first person that knew that the Earth was not the center of the universe was thousands of years ago. And if we, like, cut out all the middle stuff where we fought against, like, you can't say that. The Catholic Church was very against saying that the Earth was not the center of the universe.
You're a witch. Right? You're a witch.
Yes, you're a witch. Oh, yes, the witches. Yes. Witches, because we never burned the number of witches we burned in our entire history is 0. It's only been women, which is, that's kind of not a good thought to have. But how much further ahead would we be had we not been dumb in the intervening time? You know,
I know. I was having a conversation with one of my exes the other day about how I feel like I wonder how much was lost with, like, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. Like, how much advanced advanced science and technology, like, that we're just not aware of because it was destroyed. And yeah, that's something that I the reason it came up for me was because I was like, what if that's the direction that we're, like, I'm terrified that that's the direction that we're headed right now, especially with, like, everything being digitized. If you destroy all of that technology, what is left? Like, how much of that information is still, like, on printouts or like paper copies, physical copies? How much of that information is in that fashion? And then, but then if you destroy it by burning it, like, we could easily lose so much, knowledge through just deciding to destroy it, or people deciding to destroy it.
Could. I mean, I guess what knowledge? I mean, there's the specifics of certain societies, like, you know, who was president, whatever. You could lose all that. But the biologic reality and the physical reality we inhabit, there's enough people that know how to then go back and remake the measurements. You know, maybe we wouldn't have the functional GPS system. We'd have to go back to using paper maps. But we would not be spending 70 years doing the great trigonometric survey of India anymore. We kind of know, like, how the world's laid out.
Okay, there's some stuff that we would still know, but what if the information was, like, how to make drugs that cure people of diseases?
Yeah,
like, what if that information was?
There's enough people now that are educated that even if you wiped all the computers, it would probably take, I would guess, about 20 years to get back a lot of the stuff, because they remember the skills, right? I mean, so this is the crazy thing about, like, what I do. I can see something. I can see, like, it took me to get from A to B, and sometimes that's like 8 years. And I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, if I only knew what I was doing, it would take me like 9 months.
Yeah, don't we all? Don't we all?
It's
Yeah.
like, but this is where, so if I was going to ask you, like, if you rank like physics, chemistry, biology, and psychology, since Dominica brought up psychology later, and what would be the hardest and what would be the easiest science of those things?
To
In your
remember
mind.
or to bring back?
No, in your mind, just in your mind in terms of like what we know today.
Probably the stuff that is most taught in school, like from elementary to high school stuff, just because those are taught more broadly.
Okay. So like, I mean, no, I meant the topics like physics.
Oh, the topic, yeah. Well, like
Physics,
physics would be one of them, because they're just like innate. Like, you know, if they're mathematical formulas that have been memorized, that's a lot easier to bring back, because a lot of those formulas are, you know, drilled into your minds if you're a scientist, right? Or a mathematician. So I think that's probably more of maybe easier.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. Sharad, what would you say?
I don't know. I probably think maybe I understand what you're saying, but I'm just thinking of breaking it down. I mean, the most obvious one would be for me, I think chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah, because obviously, let's say from my background, English and writing, obviously, we can learn, we can teach, we can communicate, and we can restart stories. But in terms of finding out exactly what exactly is a chemical, I don't know. Like how do we figure it out? That will take us like consequentially longer to get to that stage.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, I mean, I'm blown away by like how people figured this out 150 years ago. I just like, these were some really, really smart people that with very, you know, bear skins and whatever, you know, whatever Dr. McCoy said on Star Trek, and you know, and they figured it out. And yeah, but physics, I mean, we've measured the universe already, just, you know, really from inference just on the surface of the earth, pretty much, until recently. And I don't think it would take that long to recreate it. But you know, in the Middle East, back in the 1100s, the mathematics was really advanced. And we lost that, which is really kind of, you know, goes to the Library of Alexandria, you know, fiasco. I mean, who knows where we would have been today if we hadn't have been intentionally destructive for some of these things along the way. And it makes, because we hate losing things, people's willing to destroy something. You're like, oh yeah, you know, I want to keep it. And that's how we motivate each other. It's easy to make somebody fearful. It's hard to make them feel wanted.
Oh yeah, yeah. Even if you want someone and want to have them in your life, if they don't, this is a common problem I feel like I've had with people that I've cared about. Like, that if they don't believe that themselves lovable, then it doesn't matter what you say to them; they won't believe it anyway.
Because you can't change your mind.
Yeah. You have to internally want to change something about yourself before you're willing to change your perspective on it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there is that, unless you're being forced to change. Like, I always tell people, like, one positive, if I can say that came out of COVID is like, look how three of us are communicating right now. I mean, could we even have imagined this pre-COVID? Like, we would have to get like some special MS-DOS kind of MS Office kind of like a little thing going on, and you know, everything now is digital. Like, I don't even use cash anymore. It's all on this. You know, little things like that. Yeah, and with work, everything's online. Most of my clients are. I've got 2 clients in Europe, 1 in America, and the majority of them are in Asia. But I couldn't do that pre-COVID.
Really? Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because it did teach us that you don't have to be in the office with your colleagues to get your work done.
No.
And I think one of the pushes for getting people back to the office is that the bosses are feeling like, well, what am I going to do if they're self?
Bosses still have things to do. Maybe you don't get it if you have an anarchy style of.
I'm total
Uh,
anarchy. No one's in charge, and I don't want anybody to be in charge. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. But I should be able to explain to you why you should do something. And COVID's a very funny example because this is where the epidemiologists and the virologists, like if I know enough, I'm not either one of those, but I know enough about each of those topics to really confidently say this would have taken about a month to fix if we knew broadly just some basic principles from those two topics. And my big gripe with authority in this one is the FDA, because there was a woman in Washington who was doing a population study on the flu. So she's collecting samples from random people in the outside of Seattle, and COVID hits, and because it's negative strand RNA virus, she's like, oh, I can make PCR primers and see what's in my samples. And she starts doing this, and the FDA sends her a cease and desist letter because she does not have her assay validated. Exactly. This is and I'm just like, this is not the time for paperwork. Get the data. It's unbelievable that this happened. This is why I distrust authority, because they may, wow, we didn't check your answers first to tell you it's okay. And I'm like, who cares? Everybody, you could have said, here's the primers, we'll give you blinded negative and positive controls, and you find somebody with a PCR machine, because they're all in all community colleges now, and get yourself tested, and let's figure out where it's at. And we could have done this totally by mutual consent and community, because
that's the thing. I always say this is when this happens, the planet of the apes will actually kick off, because no one will communicate with anyone. We'll start making monkeys smart. They'll take over, and then there you go. So.
Yeah, those hairless monkeys that climbed out of the trees long ago, they got dumb, and the other ones are going to get smart and learn all the stuff in the libraries that we forgot how to read. No, it's just mind blowing that this was a decision that was made. So I'm telling you, the people that I work with in my science tribe are not very good scientists. We use science to play politics, very much like religion. Religion uses religion. We use science to play politics. And if we actually use science to be scientists, we'd be so much further ahead, and we'd be way, way, way more inclusive.
Well, just kind of based on that, okay, how would you improve that kind of mindset right now where you are?
Oh, that's a good question, because I'm trying to start a company, and I'm trying to pitch to VCs. And so my pitch to the VCs is, I'm going to have boring board meetings. We're going to be on budget. We're going to use the scientific method to run the company, not to play politics. And so one of the things for creativity that's very good for creativity is having a constrained environment. Yes. So you don't have just a unlimited budget to try to do something new. You have a constrained environment, and you have a good vision of the product you want to make, and you have a good vision of how you would test that. What's the big question? So what's your major question? Not like how this is going to work. What's the big fatal flaw that you want to test to see if this is going to work? And you predict ahead of time, and you write it down ahead of time. This is how this is going to go, and this is why I think it's going to work this way. And if you can't predict ahead of time, you don't know enough what you're talking about. And that goes back to doing it. And less information allows you to make better decisions. That's another thing we've proven. And so you do things blinded. And because, you know, in my, a lot of people would run around, oh, what's the boss one? And I've never, you know, I've even told my bosses, like, I'm never going to care what you want. You know, you tell me what product you want to make. I'm going to help you make that. And, you know, your personal emotions are just irrelevant to making a product. The product doesn't care what you feel. And they don't like that. It's just really funny. But yeah, we are just not good at applying this to ourselves, and being curious and really trying to show, like, how do you think about things incorrectly is really, it's really tough. So my anti-pitch to the VCs is, I show a picture of a bird. Like, you can picture a flamingo, right? And did you ever wonder why the knee goes backwards? Since I have a picture right up.
Yeah, like they always stand with one knee up all the time, don't they? Yeah.
But that joint that goes backwards is not the knee. That's an ankle. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Because your ankle flexes towards the front and your knee flexes towards the back. So if you look at what it does and not where it's at, you get a better picture of what's going on. And if you look at a skeleton of a bird, they have a short little femur, and then they have, you know, their knees up under their wing, and then a big, long, extended foot and shin, because that's how birds' anatomy is. But it's the same as our anatomy. It's just the proportions are different. So that's question number one. The question number two is the Earth round or flat? Which is always going to cause them to be like, what? You a flat earther? Number three is, how do you know the question number two? And what I want to know is, what measurements do you make to know that the Earth is round? Because you can measure the roundness of the Earth using some pretty simple things, because that's what Eratosthenes did 3,000 years ago. And question number four is, how does the fractional banking system create wealth? And if they're in the VC community and don't know what the fractional banking system is, I don't want to work with them, because they're going to be too unpredictable to me, because they don't know how money works from their end.
Yeah.
And I will tell them, I don't want your money. It was nice talking to you, but I do not want your money. And that way, maybe, because nobody's going to tell them that, so I'm going to be the first one to tell them that. Maybe I'll get their attention. I don't know.
Yeah, it's that reverse psychology of, like, what you're telling me no.
Yeah.
Oh, do tell me more.
Good grief. And their hit rate's 1 out of 10, right? They make 10 investments to get one to work. And I'm saying, I can get you 3 out of 10, you know, pretty easily, just by not believing our own stories. And this is what drives me nuts about stories. And I don't think we should run on stories, but a lot of people love to run on stories. Humans run on stories, love to tell stories. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. And so I just assume if humans are thinking about it, they're thinking about it wrong. And you just go the opposite, because speaking words and playing with thoughts and doing things doesn't kill anybody. It doesn't hurt, you know. Just play with the thought. It's fine. It's fine to play with it. Just don't damage anybody.
I mean, like that's the thing. If I was to assume your shoes, obviously a thought is just a hypothetical, something that's not been proven. I mean, that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what you want. And you know, we just miss things. We just miss so many things. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I learned being a ref in soccer is we watch the sport incorrectly. We have an entire population that watches the ball fly through the air, and the referee calls something on the field, and because you have 6 degrees of visual acuity in your fovea centralis, your brain makes up the rest of it. And so that's why you're so vehemently emotionally attached to knowing that your player did not commit that foul until they show it on slow motion and you realize, oh, okay, they did. And I think we're just looking at the wrong things and having our brain imagine different things because our eyes don't work all that well. And we have the nerves our retina is installed backwards, basically. So your retina and then your the cells that detect the light are on towards your brain. They're not facing towards the front. So your nerve endings come towards the front and then have to go back through And so you have a blind spot in each eye. I don't know if you ever find your blind spot, but you can find it. And you got two blank spots that you're walking around with all the time. We're just blissfully unaware of this. I saw it. I know I saw it. I totally saw it. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Your brain just makes stuff up. And, we basically live in a fantasy world. So.
And then we do it on a mass scale as
we
well.
do it on a mass scale.
The story of the Mandela effect.
A measurement without a human brain involved is a very reliable thing.
That's really interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah, we don't know. We just don't know. I mean, I would love for you to incorporate some of this in your writing if you're doing this stuff. I've thought about how do you make an allegory of like our society? I mean, I've just thought about this. So I'm not creative enough to do that, but imagine you were a space traveler that came, and instead of like having the phenotype we have, where you have different colors of skin, right? Everybody looked the same, but randomly there were certain monkeys on the planet that were just disadvantaged, and you would just kill them at a higher rate by random. Could you imagine the emotional trauma that would cause to the reader? But this is what our society does to each other. And, I don't know how to make it relatable, but this is who we are. And yet we're getting better. Oh my gosh, this is a crazy thing. This is getting so much better. So I'm kind of an anarchist, pessimist, optimist, realist, atheist, soulist, scientist.
All in one.
All the different things.
But it's really cool. We get to do this. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Very cool.
I wouldn't call myself an anarchist, but I think so. What another autistic trait is like we don't really like or understand authority. Like we see everyone as like equal. Mm-hmm. And so that stuff that you were talking about with your work situation and stuff, I really relate to that as well. Like I hate hierarchies, but I see value to a certain extent, but not to the extent of like only one person should be in charge of everything in the entire world. Like I do support democracy as much as it is possible, and I don't think the United States is the best functional democracy in the world. There are a lot of
best dysfunctional democracy.
Having grown up in Australia, I absolutely think that the voting system is better there. However, so just for example, Australia, you are legally required to vote in an election. You have to. So
awesome.
If you don't, you get a fine. When you get to the booth to vote, you can do a donkey vote. You can write whatever the crap you want on there, and so your vote doesn't actually count, but you still have to vote. You still have to submit something.
Interesting.
I don't know how different the United States would be if that was a requirement, because there's a lot of people that just don't care or don't see the value in it, and there's also a lot of uneducated people that don't put in what's required to research and understand everything that they're voting on. So I have zero solution or thought into what the way to fix that is, but it's interesting.
I do like democracy. I like having shared opinion on like what you want to get to. I think voting for people is a terrible idea.
Great. Yeah.
I think we should vote for outcomes. And
yes.
From a public health perspective, the number you want to look at is whatever per 100,000 population. And
I think this is why, what some of the issues that we get on ballots in the United States are those, issues of things. Do you vote for raising the minimum wage, for example, was one that we had on the most recent ballot in California? Do you vote for allowing the right to an abortion in the state's constitution. That was another one. So those kinds of issues do bring out voters. So I agree with you. I think that is.
They do, but instead of voting for whether to have an abortion, wouldn't it be better to vote for what are the maternal and fetal outcomes we would like to see as a society, and then whatever tool we need to get there to achieve that. And that's the thing that the pro-life, this whole pro-life thing, because the states with the highest discrepancy between rich and poor are the pro-life states. And it's terrible. We just go blissfully about these things, and we're proud, not us personally, but they're like, oh yeah, we're for we protect the rights of the unborn, but you're killing them. You're killing them, at a faster rate than anybody else, and so
and that's the thing that they don't get. Like,
no, and so you got to know what the measurement is, and saying, hey, this is not, we should not have this discrepancy when there's no biologic reason to have this discrepancy. And if you're somebody that's got like a genetic disease that causes really high cholesterol and atherosclerosis, you're gonna die at higher rates for heart attacks. That's a biology problem. But if it's just social, oh my goodness, that's indefensible. And I just don't think we look at the data correctly to say this. We should really be embarrassed by this. And to me, it's like a kid, crapped in his pants and like, hey, Mom, look what I did.
You too, huh? Okay.
Good, honey, let's. I guess we got to clean up your mess now.
Yeah, we are making a mess, and I hate global warming. I hate that phrase. And the only way to fix it is stop taking carbon out of the ground and put it in the air. Because that's what we're doing. From a chemistry standpoint, that's what we're doing. And there's just no way to believe your way out of that. You have to physically do something different to stop that. Or we just drowned a billion poor people, but that's okay because we've done that throughout our entire history. So maybe you just, I don't know what. But getting somebody to care about you versus, okay, let's just make this a more predictable place. I think it's a little bit more motivating. And again, we built a society for automobiles, not people. And Europe fixed it. I mean, look at all of Europe in the 70s. They had the same exact car problem we have now, and it's completely different. And it's a happier place to be. I like traveling to Europe because you got really good public transportation and you can zip around anywhere with a whole lot less stress and a whole lot less money.
Oh yeah.
Much better outcome. Yes.
Yeah, I think if you look at like specifically places like Denmark or whatever, they're amazing. And it's not just their education, their healthcare, their prison rates. I was actually, I don't know why, you go through certain rabbit holes. I was one day, I just went down a rabbit hole, don't judge me. And I was looking up the prison system in Denmark, and the rehabilitation rates are like ridiculous. Like every one in, oh God, I don't know, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 offenders never offends again.
Yeah.
Because they're rehabilitated when they're in prison. So yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to invent anything new. We just have to adopt it from somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah.
If only we could get enough agreement to make that happen.
If only.
There are so many things from Australia that I would love to adopt here. Gun control.
Well, they did that.
Healthcare.
Well, and we do not. We just kill it, but we want freedom. And there was an onion. I forget what it was. Somebody wrote the NRA, failed to use the Second Amendment, protect from an overarching central government like they said they would, right? That's what the purpose of the Second Amendment was.
Yeah.
And so if you read it that way, then, we should probably all be armed with nuclear weapons because, and that seems very ridiculous. But I want my nuke because my government has a nuke and I need to protect myself from it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy because you look at the Constitution and they say, "Yeah, this is my Second Amendment. You can pry this from my cold, dead hands." You know, like
Yes.
quoting Charlton Heston, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing. But if you look at what, if you're going by that metric, then surely, you know, obviously, American citizens are allowed slaves, so they can do whatever they like. Does that mean that that should remain the same? I mean, little things like that.
It took the country built on freedom over 2 centuries to figure out slavery was wrong. So
Yeah,
I think, like religion, if you tell how to treat your slaves, then that kind of disqualifies you from having an opinion on anything else moral, in my opinion.
true. Very true.
Because these are fellow human beings, and you would not want to be in that situation yourself. No.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way. I mean, like the fact is, those in positions of power just won by the genetic lottery. That's all it is.
Yeah. In many ways, they have to be at right place, right time. And we have a system that somebody's going to be there. Somebody's always going to win the Super Bowl. Somebody's always going to win the World Cup, because that's the system we have. It'd be nice to get rid of it and vote on outcomes. Let's keep people alive longer.
You're aiming too high, I think. There, so I gotta keep you alive.
America in this economy,
because then the kids will hear it and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a good idea." And it may, it may take us 100 years to get there. I won't see it, but 3,000 years ago, who could have imagined this? So
yeah,
it's true.
It is
very true.
What's going to happen 300 years from now? Who knows, right? I don't know.
Will we still have a planet? The things that
the planet is still here. The planet's not going anywhere.
Will we be here? Well, it depends. We do have.
There have been examples of societies that have inhabited, ruins of more advanced societies along the way, and like, look at these people, look what they did.
No.
They've lost it. So maybe that's where we're headed. Maybe we'll go back to the dark ages for the next couple hundred years. I don't think so, though. I think too many people know too many things.
That is a thing. So it would require, global war to destroy a lot of things to really regress back, because the population nowadays is what 8 billion, 9 billion, something.
It's 8 billion and
8 billion.
And change, right? Yeah.
86% of them are literate, I think, is the number right now.
So very different than back in those days, where it was nowhere near that many people. Like, I remember being in school and being taught there were, I don't know, like 5 billion people or something. And like, that's like, what, 20 years ago? Like,
people be shagging.
A lot has certainly changed. My dad is back and left another comment. Should I bring up his?
Please. Yeah.
He apologized for not being here. We totally missed him, though, by the way.
Yeah.
It's all fine. I'm not going to bring that comment up because it's not as relevant, but I will bring up this one. So he said that the point is part of life purpose seems to be moving from limited perception through bumping up against others in order to put the puzzle together to gain a bigger vision.
Yeah, I guess so. That's not unique to humans, though.
Is it not?
No, I don't think so. We're curious. We're a curious species. So is a cat. What's over there? Is there food over there? That seems to drive biology. Oh, what's over there? Oh, we do things like predator examination. Ooh, scary. Oh, let's go. That's why we have roller coasters and stuff today, or jump out of airplanes with the parachute on. Or to do something different. Maybe we don't have a purpose. I don't know. People don't like to hear that. What's my purpose?
Yeah, like I do. I think I heard this from somewhere where someone says hypothetically, right? If there's a nuclear war happens tomorrow and all forms of technology as we know it is wiped.
Yeah,
we probably say it'll take us maybe 20 years for us to kind of to get back into our version of the Stone Age, like 20 years to reach back up to that level.
No, I think we'd be much further ahead. Although a bunch of us would die because we have no clue as how to farm our own food.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
So it would be horrible to starve, but those that have the knowledge. It'll be enough that people know how to farm and know some aspect of science to be able to build stuff back. So we'll know what DNA is, RNA, proteins, and stuff. We won't have to go through and discover those things again, unless we completely wiped ourselves out. I don't know.
I mean, it depends. If we break it down to the whole tribalism kind of aspect, it's no longer a civilization. That will, different social aspects, won't it? So who knows?
Who knows, right?
Mm.
But yeah, we're not very smart because we gave politicians access to nuclear weapons. So that was really not a good idea.
Yeah.
And I would love for the physicists to take them back without the politicians knowing. So if you ended up pushing the button,
it's just not going to do it.
Coming after you because you were irresponsible. Yes.
This isn't where I parked my car. Like, I don't know, like I always say that people are extremely intelligent. I just don't think that society is very smart, if that makes sense.
We're not. It does, yeah.
No.
Society is not very smart.
But people are highly intelligent. But yeah.
Certain ones, yes.
Certain ones.
I don't know how to build a computer. I couldn't do that on my own. I don't know how to build an internal combustion engine or, lay railroads. And I think that's where I'm good at this. Someone else is good at that. Someone else is good at that. And together we make progress. But yes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it kind of goes down to the moral implications as well, isn't it? I mean, for example, would you risk your life to save a budding child from a building? Yes, you would. But let's suppose hypothetically, if you're thinking about society as a group, if you risk your life and hypothetically you didn't make it alive, who would feed your family?
Yeah.
Right. So you have that to think about. That's a cycle. So there is the yin and the yang to everything.
Yeah. No, so instead of making billionaires, I think we should actually be making more artists along the way, because artists are cheap, frankly. How many people would be artists for, just above minimum wage if you had a comfortable life, right? A nice place to stay, decent
healthcare.
It would be cheap. And I think making college till you're 30. We say all the babies come out and they can't do anything. When the zebra comes out and is ready to go. Progress is having babies that take 18 years to grow up. It used to be 12. In certain parts of the world, it's still 12.
Sure.
Well, these days, they reach 18 as adulthood, but they still don't necessarily have all the life skills that they need to survive.
They're not adults. No, make it 30. That's progress.
Yeah, 30 is on the average. Yeah.
Work from your 30 to 60, and then taper off after that. And no, I don't know. If we were really smart, this is not the outcome we would have.
Yes. Yes.
Very true.
If we were really smart, we would be able to figure out how to teach this better. And we're not. We haven't done it. We haven't got the outcome. Therefore, we are not smart. That's what the data tell me.
It is really hard to manage larger populations of people when there's such wider, diverse thinking as well, I think, So
it is, but okay, so if you own a car and everyone's looking for a good mechanic, you don't take anybody's opinion on who's what should be done to your car. You go to people who know how cars run. And so I think for part of voting should be passing a test, not the scam tests like they used in the US way back when, but one applied equally to everybody. You want to have an opinion on the electrical system, you kind of need to know how it works. Please explain how this works, how DC current is, AC current is, how this is transmitted, how it's distributed. Have some basic knowledge. And if you have some basic knowledge, then you can have an opinion. And your opinion weight goes with how much knowledge you have. And part of the knowledge we've gained is knowing that you can do that. You have to do it blinded. And that's what it always comes down to. No brains allowed. You have to predict ahead of time. It's a great system, frankly. But we just don't like that.
A lot of people would
don't
not
like
support
that.
it.
And I heard, so again, like I'm telling you, scientists use science to play politics. So I was in a conference, and there's a thing called a master clinical trial protocol, where you make a protocol for clinical trial, and then you slot different drugs in so you can compare them head to head. Something a sponsor will never do is compare to somebody else unless a regulatory agency tells them to do so. And the guy, it was a guy, gets up,
of course it was,
and says, well, what if we know our drug works, but the data shows it doesn't? And I was attending virtually. Otherwise, I would have gotten up and said, bit his head off. Because if you are not willing to have it independently tested without you controlling it, you haven't done a good enough job.
Yeah.
Very true.
My dad's left some more comments. I'll pull them up.
Yes, he is. We're talking about Tom Hanks now.
I'll pull up his other comments first. So there was this one. In a way, our conversation has come to examples of what my dad was pointing out. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Frank. A little motivated reasoning.
Is the money priority is a paradigm that is seen as truth, but just a perception, but takes aha moments to change.
Money.
I feel like my dad is maybe not watching live right now.
Maybe, I don't
brought
know.
up because I talked about the Nelson, my experience of Nelson Mandela,
that backs
being
up.
being in Cape Town when Nelson Mandela passed away a while back, and that. So I think my dad is not watching live at the moment, but so he's referring back to that experience. It's a bit like Tom Hanks. Life is just a box of chocolates. Experiences synchronicity.
So synchronicity a reference to the Police album or just a adjective?
No, I think it's just an adjective.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think I've run out of gas.
I'm feeling it too. Yeah, I'm just like, there are 10 viewers right now. What? Thank you so much for tuning
I really enjoyed
in.
this. This was a really analytical discussion today. Thank you so much.
Did you learn
it's good to change things up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully you did, and I think that's part of it. Just exposure to different things.
No, absolutely. It's nice to change things up, get some different perspectives, different backgrounds every now and then. So yeah, as I was saying, those of you who are still watching now, thank you so much for tuning in. Drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Helps get the videos out to more audience. Share it if you like it. Share it with other people. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I do this pretty much every week. Next week we do have a live stream where I'll be discussing romantic comedies with Sharad and one of my other regular guests, Mike Brown. That's going to be on Monday US time and Tuesday in the Asia, Australia regions. So that event is already on my channel, so you can go check that out. Hit the notify bell if you want to find out when we're going to be live for that. And yeah, drop us some comments if you have questions that you want us to answer and discuss. Sharing experiences from our own lives in an upcoming stream. Would love to answer your questions. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Love to hear from you guys. All right.
No, Jerry, nice to meet you. Dominica, good to see you.